Chapter 9:16. Seeing Zichen's actions, the Hua family's spiritual body was stunned. However, after realizing what Zichen was trying to do, it began to laugh out loud. Idiot, this sphere revolves towards the outside. Otherwise, how can these crystals and colorful lights be thrown out? Even if you're fast enough, you won't be able to follow the trajectory. You're just wasting your energy, the Hua family's spiritual body mocked. Is that so? Zichen's voice sounded again. However, he was not far away from the Hua family's spiritual body. Previously, Zichen was still outside the sphere, but now, he was inside the sphere. He turned into a bolt of silver lightning and spun around the sphere. It seemed like he was doing something useless, but in reality, he was following a certain trajectory and was slowly approaching the center of the sphere. Seeing that Zichen was getting closer and closer to the center, the Hua family's spiritual body knew that something was wrong. Flames surged around its body as it tried to forcibly take the jade piece. Zichen saw this and sneered, "It's useless. This is mental work, not physical work." As soon as Zichen finished speaking, a large number of colorful lights and crystals spun out and swept towards the Hua family's spiritual body. Seeing so many colorful lights coming, the latter's expression changed. Light flashed under its feet as its body turned into flames and retreated. Although it narrowly avoided this wave of attacks, the Hua family's spiritual body found that it had retreated to the periphery. When it looked at Zichen again, it was already very close. Under the guidance of Zichen's high-quality spiritual senses, nothing unexpected happened. Zichen, who was spinning, successfully reached the center of the sphere. Then, with a flash, he left the orbit and grabbed the jade piece with one hand. After grabbing the jade piece, Zichen felt as if he had grasped the laws. Then, he held the jade piece in his hand and put it away. After the jade piece was taken away, the colorful lights and crystals began to slow down. Just as the Hua family's spiritual body was stunned, Zichen dispersed the colorful lights and took away the surrounding crystals. The Hua clan's spirit body stared blankly at Zichen as he took away the thousands of crystals. He didn't stop him, nor did he try to snatch them away. It was unknown whether he was concerned about his reputation or if he had forgotten about this in his shock. After collecting all the crystals, Zichen let out a sigh of relief. He raised the jade piece in his hand and said to the Hua family's spirit body, "Look, this is mental work, not physical work." In the face of Zichen's taunts, the Hua family's spiritual body's expression instantly changed. However, before he could attack, Zichen had already put away the jade piece and flapped his lightning wings to fly toward another ball. During this period of time, another 2 balls were taken away. They were obtained by the 2 native forces. Now, there were only 4 balls left. With 4 gone, the giant ball didn't continue to replenish itself. It was clear that with every ball taken away, there would be 1 less. The others also sped up, and the other Xiantian realm martial artists also began to find their targets. As the number of balls decreased, the people who hadn't obtained anything began to grow anxious. It was inevitable that they would become bolder. But, these balls were filled with all sorts of dangers, and they couldn't afford to be distracted. After becoming anxious, it was inevitable that they would be distracted. This led to several more Xiantian realm martial artists being struck by crystals and dying. The demon ape didn't move forward. Instead, it stood in a safe zone and watched Zichen. At this time, Zichen had already finished deducing the second ball. He flapped his lightning wings and began to circle around the ball, approaching the depths from the edge. The deduction time this time was much shorter, and there were some unforeseen events that occurred. Although they were only minor mistakes and weren't fatal, they still caused Zichen to break out in a cold sweat. It wasn't until Zichen smoothly obtained the second jade piece that the cold sweat finally dissipated. The speed of the balls around him had greatly decreased. Zichen warned himself that he couldn't be careless, because carelessness could lead to death. After Zichen obtained 2 jade pieces, the others also obtained theirs, causing the number of jade pieces here to decrease. There were still 8 balls left, but all of them were occupied, and there was more than 1 person inside. The difficulty of obtaining the 3rd jade piece had increased for Zichen, but he didn't give up. With a flap of his lightning wings, he arrived outside of one of the balls. This was the largest of the 8 balls. Inside, the Jin family's spiritual body was dodging the attacks of the crystals. The Tyrant clan's tyrant body was also inside. Zichen chose this one because both of them had just entered, and it would take some time for them to successfully obtain the jade pieces. During this time, if Zichen's luck was good enough and his deduction speed was fast enough, he could seize the opportunity to obtain the jade pieces. After the two of them blocked the first wave of attacks, they saw Zichen in the outside world. The corners of their mouths curled up into a sneer, as if to tell Zichen that it was only now that they were done. After that, the two of them looked at each other, one on the left and one on the right, as they approached the center of the sphere from opposite directions. In the outside world, Zichen had already memorized this ball at an extremely fast speed. Then, he let the ball rotate rapidly inside his sea of consciousness. As it rotated, Zichen would find an extremely safe path to go deeper. Vibrations constantly came from the side. The jade pieces in the other balls were taken away, and then the balls disappeared. Soon, out of the 8 balls, only 3 were left. The other 5 had already been taken away. Other than the one that Zichen had deduced, the other 2 balls were being fought over by a few other people who were comparable to spirit bodies. In one of the balls, there were 3 spiritual bodies. One of them was the spiritual body of the Mu family, another was the spiritual body of the assassin, and the last one was a young man from the sword sect who had a sword heart. The 3 of them were not far from the center of the jade piece. They were within a controllable range, and they were ready to force their way through the last distance. The spiritual body of the Mu family suddenly released a dazzling green light. This green light was a materialized energy, and it was filled with a powerful aura. After the green light appeared, it surrounded his body and quickly formed a green light shield on the surface of his body. The light shield had an extremely strong defense, and he directly flew toward the jade piece with the light shield. During this time, when the colorful light landed on the light shield, it would immediately bounce off. When the crystals landed on the light shield, they would also make a loud sound and change their direction. The light shield had actually blocked the attack of the spiritual thought crystals. This defensive power was simply incredible. However, there were too many crystals, and they had a strong impact. This caused the spiritual body of the Mu family to greatly decrease his speed as he rushed forward. At the same time, the green light shield around him also became dim after withstanding the attacks. However, this green light shield was enough to last him until he got close to the jade piece. Just as the spiritual body of the Mu family was about to attack the jade piece, the assassin also moved. Light flashed around his body, and he actually melted into the void and disappeared. The devil ape had been watching him from the outside. This was because in the devil ape's opinion, he was the only one in the group who could silently approach Zichen and make Zichen suffer. Just as the assassin's figure disappeared, the devil ape had already activated the delusion breaker eye. Then, the devil ape's body trembled, and a look of disbelief appeared on his face. This was because the delusion breaker eye had not discovered the assassin's figure. Damn it, how could this be? The devil ape cursed. The red light in his eyes burned even brighter, like 2 sharp blades. After activating the delusion breaker eye to the limit, he saw a blurry figure appear in the ball. At this moment, this figure was rapidly dodging the crystals and colorful lights. Its speed was extremely fast, and as it dodged, it charged toward the jade piece in front of it. Furthermore, the devil ape clearly saw the crystal hit the figure, but it did not react. It was as if it had hit an illusory figure. A loud sword hum suddenly sounded in the sky. The sword sect youth with the heart of the sword also made his move. The long sword on his back was unsheathed for the first time, and it emitted a blinding sword light. After the sword hum, the blinding light filled the entire ball. The youth with the heart of the sword held the long sword and became one with it. With an indomitable force, he charged toward the jade piece in front of him. The blinding sword light was like a materialized energy. Everywhere it passed, regardless of whether it was the crystals or the colorful lights, everything was blocked. One person and one sword, who moved later but arrived first, shook off the attacks of the crystals and reached the jade piece. However, before he could grab the jade piece, a fierce attack came from beside him. When the fierce attack appeared, it was accompanied by a monstrous killing intent. It was the assassin who had also arrived and made a powerful attack at the same time. Just as the assassin was attacking the young man from the sword sect, a green light wrapped around the jade piece like a rope. The spiritual body of the Mu family arrived just in time, but before it could grab the jade piece, a sharp sword light cut through the green light. The three spiritual bodies fought for a jade piece for a short time. In an instant, light flashed and powerful energy surged. However, before everyone could see it clearly, the three of them had already stopped. The jade piece finally fell into the hands of the sword sect youth. The three of them stood in three different directions, allowing the crystals around them to slow down. They did not continue to fight for it. The sword sect youth took the jade piece, and the other two flashed away. As soon as this side ended, in another ball, the spiritual body of the Hua family successfully took the jade piece. The people of the Shui family and the Tu family did not fight with him. At this moment, in the huge ball world, there was only one ball left. The spiritual body of the Hua family and the tyrant body were trying to get to the center. As for Zi Chen, he was completely ignored because he was still deducing and had not yet entered. Hei Ba and the others stared at the largest ball. From their eager and excited eyes, it could be seen that they did not care who got the ball. They just wanted the ball to disappear as soon as possible. In addition to Hei Ba, the other people from the local forces also had the same expression. At this moment, everyone's attention was on the two people in the ball. In their eyes, it was going to be a short battle. However, at this moment, Zi Chen, who had been deducing outside, moved. He spread the thunder wings on his back and was about to enter. Seeing that Zi Chen was about to enter, the spiritual body of the Hua family had a mocking look on his face. He said disdainfully, "Idiot, he's about to get the jade piece. Don't you think it's too late?" Although the others did not say anything, their expressions were similar to the spiritual body of the Hua family. They all thought that Zi Chen had no chance. He was just going to show off his existence. Because the two people in the sphere were not too far away from the jade piece, they could use their strength to force their way through. Zi Chen, on the other hand, needed some time to enter, and that time was enough for the jade piece to find its owner. Chapter 9:17. The heavenly book, wrapped in the power of the rules, turned into a beam of light and flew away at an extremely fast speed, like a bolt of golden lightning. Chase! Chase after it and stop the heavenly book. As soon as the heavenly book flew away, a loud shout came from the crowd. Then, they all turned into streams of light and chased after the heavenly book in the distance. Damn it, we can only chase after it. Seeing this scene, Hei Ba and the others' faces were ugly to the extreme, but judging from the situation in front of them, it seemed that they could only chase forward. As for whether they could catch up, Hei Ba and the others had no confidence because 1,000 years ago, the heavenly book was lost under such circumstances. Several of them showed their extreme speed and went straight for the heavenly book. Streams of light flashed, afraid that they would be a little slower. Stop them, don't let these native forces come over. We will take the heavenly book, you guys stop them. A group of spirit masters immediately ordered their subordinates to stop these native forces because these people were too cunning. In addition to being cunning, they were also more experienced, so they deliberately stopped them from moving forward. The innate warriors who wanted to chase after the heavenly book immediately turned around and rushed toward the native forces with weapons in hand after hearing the words of the spirit masters. Having their plan ruined, Hei Ba and the others were already in a state of madness, and their expressions were even more ferocious. At this moment, seeing these people dare to stop them and not let them go forward, they were immediately furious. "Go to hell!" They shouted loudly with crazy killing intent on their faces. One after another, they did almost the same action. With a wave of their sleeves, rays of light appeared from the cuffs of their sleeves. After these rays of light appeared from the cuffs, they shook and transformed into strange beasts. These strange beasts included tigers, leopards, lions, and wolves. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 of them appeared. After these strange beasts appeared, they let out a shocking roar. Their cold eyes looked at the trial takers and directly rushed toward them. The trial takers' spiritual senses were unable to detect the true strength of the strange beasts in front of them. However, as Xiantian martial artists, they were very powerful. As long as they didn't encounter a spirit body, they would be invincible. Most of them weren't afraid of these strange beasts. The strange beasts rushed over, and they all used their strongest attacks. In an instant, various energy rays flashed, and various powerful attacks fell from the sky, rushing toward the strange beasts in front of them. Facing such an attack, the exotic beasts actually didn't dodge at all. The few that charged forward were instantly blasted apart by the energy attack. The Xiantian realm cultivators had mocking expressions on their faces when they saw the exotic beasts unable to withstand a single blow. In their opinion, not only were these exotic beasts unable to withstand a single blow, they were also brainless. They knew they were going to die, yet they still charged forward without hesitation. The trial challenger was a bit surprised by the appearance of a human figure. But he didn't stop attacking. His fierce attacks appeared once more. Boom, boom, boom. The human exploded a few meters away from the trial challenger. The pride in the human's eyes grew even stronger when he destroyed his enemy so easily. But at that moment, a bright light suddenly rushed out from the explosion of energy, rushing directly toward the space between the trial challenger's eyebrows. This happened so quickly that the trial challenger had no time to react. Caught off guard, the trial challenger was hit, and his body immediately stopped moving. Then, he felt a sharp pain in his head as a surge of energy entered his knowledge sea. The same scene happened to the other trial challengers. They thought they had destroyed the other party's body, but they didn't expect the other party to have such a terrifying spiritual sense. The spiritual sense emitted a bright light that entered the trial challenger's forehead, displaying the most powerful spiritual sense attack. The spiritual sense attack was extremely powerful. Coupled with the fact that it was caught off guard, one of the Xiantian warriors couldn't withstand it and his spiritual sense was destroyed. After the person died, the spiritual thoughts in his sea of consciousness quickly emerged and successfully took control of the person's body. After that, the trial taker, who had been possessed in an instant, began to brandish his weapon and attack his companions beside him. At the beginning of the battle, these trial challengers suffered great losses, but they quickly reacted and retreated after the first attack. Although they could save their lives, they couldn't stop the attack. Heba and the others also quickly chased after the heavenly book amidst the chaos. Soon, Heba and the others disappeared from sight. Here, the battle was still going on. Outside the melee, there were two people standing. It was Zichen and the devil ape. Seeing the crowd leave, Zichen was still indifferent. Instead, he looked ahead with a strange expression. The devil ape's face was full of anxiety. "If we don't chase, we won't be able to get the heavenly book," it said. "Chase." Zichen looked at the devil ape. The strange expression on his face didn't diminish. "Where should we chase?" The devil ape looked at Zichen as if he was an idiot and couldn't help but say, "Are you stupid? Of course we should chase in the direction where the heavenly book escaped. Let's go quickly, or it'll be too late." Zichen heard it and smiled. The strange expression on his face disappeared. He then shook his head and said, "No, we should chase in the opposite direction." In the opposite direction. The devil ape was stunned. Zichen nodded and said seriously, "In my perception, the heavenly book flew in that direction." The devil ape immediately shouted, "Stupid, stupid, you must be stupid. Zichen, you're stupid. I just used the delusion breaker eye to see the heavenly book flying in that direction, and the spirits are chasing in that direction. You're really stupid." Zichen didn't explain further. Instead, he grabbed the devil ape and said, "Let's go quickly. If we don't go now, we won't be able to catch up." With that, Zichen took the devil ape and flew in the opposite direction. During this time, several trial takers saw Zichen fly away and their faces suddenly showed strange expressions. Obviously, they had heard the conversation between Zichen and the devil ape. One of the trial takers suddenly slapped his forehead and said, "Damn it, we fell into a trap. This Zichen isn't looking for the heavenly book, he's running away." Another person also realized, "That's right, he must have taken the opportunity to run away. Damn it, this guy is really cunning." The third person shouted, "Then why are we wasting our energy here? Let's go after them quickly." The others nodded and then abandoned the exotic beasts. They turned and chased in the direction Chen and the devil ape went. Soon, there were no traces of the trial takers, but the remaining exotic beasts didn't chase after Ba and the others. Instead, they went in the opposite direction. No one knew if they were chasing after the trial takers or Chen. In the process of flying, the devil ape also quickly learned of Chen's intention. He chuckled, "So you want us to run away?" Chen glared at the devil ape and said, "Run away? We're going to look for the heavenly book." A knowing smile appeared on the devil ape's face as it nodded repeatedly, indicating that it understood. Obviously, in its opinion, Chen didn't want to admit that he was afraid that the spirits would escape, so he found such a high-sounding reason. However, in this way, they would be far away from the spirits and would no longer be in danger. Although there was no danger, they still missed the heavenly book. The devil ape didn't know how important the heavenly book was to others, but he knew that this page of the heavenly book was extremely important to Chen. Because with this page of the heavenly book, Chen could combine the human scroll of the heavenly book, and his essence, qi, and spirit would reach perfection and break through to the human realm. He would be the strongest in the human realm. However, the devil ape couldn't understand Chen's abnormal behavior today. He took the initiative to give up the heavenly book. Since he couldn't figure it out, the devil ape could only follow Chen. However, as they flew, the devil ape realized that something was wrong. Chen wasn't leading him in the direction they came from, but in the opposite direction of the heavenly book. During this period, Chen changed directions several times. Sometimes, he even led the devil ape in circles. Looking at his serious face, he didn't look like he was running away at all. It seemed that he was really looking for something. Is it possible? Is the heavenly book really here? The devil ape looked serious for the first time. Because they took a few more turns halfway, the other Xiantian realm warriors caught up with them. When they were still some distance away from Chen, they shouted loudly. As for the content of their shouts, it was nothing more than disgusting words like "don't run," "fight with the spirits if you have the ability." Soon, a series of roars came from behind. It was the strange beasts and humans who had caught up. The devil ape didn't have a good impression of these strange beasts and humans. He couldn't help but scold, "Humans imitate beasts. You're neither human nor beast." Chen ignored them. He went in circles and turned corners. Behind him, the Xiantian realm warriors were puzzled when they saw Chen's strange behavior. However, they were afraid of Chen's battle strength and could only follow behind. They didn't dare to rush forward. Under the cover of the rules, the heavenly book flew in a straight line. Behind them, the spirits chased desperately, even at the expense of their life essence. A page of the heavenly book was really precious. Everyone was desperately chasing after it. During this period, almost everyone showed their peak speed, but even their subversive speed was still a little short of obtaining the heavenly book. Behind them, Ba and the others quickly caught up. After they caught up, they released the strange beasts again, wanting to stop the spirits. However, these spirits were all in the human origin realm. Their battle strength was unimaginable. As soon as the strange beasts rushed over, they were killed by the spirits. This kind of killing was done by the spirits. It was very decisive. In addition to Ba and the others, the spirits were also secretly competing with the others. It was either you sneak attack me, or I take the opportunity to attack you. Because of this, they couldn't catch up with the heavenly book. Just as this kind of infighting continued, the power of the rules on the heavenly book suddenly increased. Along the way, not only did the power of the rules not decrease, but it increased. This made the people who noticed this puzzled. When Ba and the others saw this, their faces changed drastically. Stop fighting. Quickly break the power of the rules on the heavenly book. Otherwise, it will disappear. Chapter 9:18. As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed. They couldn't care less about the infighting and started to chase after the heavenly book at their fastest speed. Without the infighting, everyone's speed was obviously faster. After each of them displayed their extreme speed, the distance between them and the heavenly book was getting closer and closer. Just like that, the two sides stopped fighting and continued flying for hundreds of thousands of miles. After flying for hundreds of thousands of miles, the amount of law energy on the heavenly book increased. This made everyone have a bad feeling. Then, they all unleashed powerful attacks against the heavenly book. In the sky, all kinds of energy started to surge. Terrifying attacks kept falling. In the midst of the vibrations, the space was distorted even more. This time, everyone chased for another 100,000 miles. The heavenly book's power of rules had reached a certain limit. Seeing this, Ba and the others' eyes were filled with despair. Because this was what happened 1,000 years ago. At this point, the heavenly book suddenly disappeared. It disappeared without a sign. Damn it. It's all your fault. Ba looked at the spiritual bodies with hatred in his eyes. His eyes were filled with hatred. It was the same look that the native forces had when they stayed here 1,000 years ago. He had waited for 1,000 years in this world for the heavenly book. But now, he didn't have the chance. He couldn't get the heavenly book anymore. He didn't have another 1,000 years to wait because his cultivation level didn't allow it. This world would reject the existence of the mid-stage mortal origin realm. He had been suppressing himself for 1,000 years just for this day. But 1,000 years was the limit. They didn't have another 1,000 years to wait. The others' faces were also extremely ugly. The situation in front of them was too similar to what happened 1,000 years ago. This meant that their 1,000 years of waiting were in vain. However, before they could curse or retaliate, they saw that the heavenly book in front of them suddenly slowed down. This situation was somewhat unusual and had not happened thousands of years ago. The group's faces changed. They sped up again. This time, they didn't have to chase very far before they caught up with the heavenly book. At this moment, the heavenly book was emitting a bright golden light. It looked like a huge golden light ball. The surface of the light ball was covered with the power of rules, preventing them from getting close. The heavenly book did not turn into golden light and disappear. Instead, it stopped. However, there were rules protecting it. The crowd arrived and watched from a distance. Their faces were filled with doubt and vigilance. They wondered why the heavenly book had stopped and were on guard against the people around them. After stopping, there was no more movement on the heavenly book. However, the power of rules on the surface of the book was still blocking everyone. The gazes of all the experts landed on the people from the local forces. The questioning look on their faces was very obvious. Wu Chang looked at the heavenly book in the golden light ball in front of him and shook his head. 1,000 years ago, the heavenly book disappeared under such circumstances. This situation did not occur. When Seng Qing heard this, he also said, "Indeed, it is very strange that the heavenly tomes suddenly stopped. It is somewhat abnormal. Could it be that they want us to blast open the power of rules and then take the heavenly tomes away?" This guess was somewhat reasonable, so after everyone looked at each other, they all opened up a distance. While they were on guard against each other, they launched attacks at the golden light ball in front of them. Everyone's attacks were very powerful. It was not a problem for them to fill the sea and move mountains. However, when it came to breaking the power of rules, their attacks were much weaker. Many beautiful and terrifying attacks landed on the power of rules, but they could not shake it at all. The power of rules on the surface of the heavenly book was still there. All the attacks that came in contact with the power of rules dissipated automatically when they came within 5 meters of the power of rules. Since the attacks were useless, everyone gave up and stared at the golden light ball in front of them. During this period, Ba and the others also used their spiritual senses to observe the changes in the power of rules. They found that the power of rules on the outside of the heavenly book was disappearing automatically. This disappearance was very slow. Only the local forces with special spiritual senses could sense it. However, once it disappeared to a certain extent, the group of spiritual bodies could naturally sense it. The power of rules was disappearing. Once all the rules disappeared, the heavenly book would appear in front of everyone. Ba and the others' expressions did not change. Their eyes were fixed on the golden light ball. However, at this moment, they quickly communicated with each other through their spiritual senses. Our spiritual senses are strong. We can sense the disappearance of the power of rules in advance. This is our advantage. Now, when they are unprepared and have no intention to kill, we should attack immediately. Ba's voice sounded in everyone's mind. There are only 7 of us, but there are 8 of them. Moreover, all of them are spiritual bodies. I am afraid it will be difficult to kill them. A voice sounded. The others did not answer. Obviously, they were in a dilemma. But if we don't kill them, when they sense the weakening of the power of rules, they will be able to guess that the heavenly book will appear naturally. At that time, if these outsiders join forces, we will still have to fight them, Ba said. Indeed, now we have 2 options. One is to kill all of them. The other is to retreat. This time, it was Wu Chang who transmitted his voice. Retreat. How can we just retreat after waiting for 1,000 years? Kill. I agree with killing, Seng Qing transmitted his voice. It had to be said that this group of people were not ordinary people. While they were discussing how to kill with their spiritual senses, their expressions did not change at all. In fact, when the spiritual body's gaze swept over, they would even nod at the other party while being on guard. Kill. Now, we can only kill. Soon, the 7 of them reached a consensus to fight against the 8 spiritual bodies. The trial testers are not united. The other 3 are alone. Ignore them for now. Focus on killing the 5 elements. Once you make a move, strike like lightning, Ba commanded. The others naturally agreed. Thus, the battle broke out without warning. Rays of light flickered from the bodies of the 7 people. These rays of light were like raindrops as they charged towards the 5-element spiritual bodies. Before they even landed, these rays of light expanded and turned into mutated beasts. After these mutated beasts appeared, they charged towards the 5 people. The number of strange beasts that appeared in an instant directly exceeded 300, which was equivalent to 300 experts. When they pounced on the 5 of them, they had already displayed their strongest attack. For a time, all kinds of whistling sounds were constantly heard, and all kinds of fierce attacks were constantly launched. In the face of these strange beasts' attacks, the 8 outsiders were not harmonious. After seeing the target of the attack, Tyrant Body, Killer, and Genshin directly flashed and retreated. On the other hand, the faces of the 5 elemental spirits were filled with astonishment. However, this astonishment was quickly replaced by anger. They let out beastly roars and launched their most ferocious attacks at these exotic beasts. The 5 of them instantly released a bright light. This light was like a light pillar that directly filled the sky. Then, the light pillar began to expand, surging with an extremely terrifying aura, and swept toward the strange beasts around. The 5 of them emitted a 5-colored light. When this 5-colored light fell on the strange beasts, these strange beasts did not even have time to scream before their bodies disappeared under the light. This kind of disappearance was without warning, as if they had evaporated into thin air. Wherever the light passed, there was nothing left of the strange beasts. Whether it was their beast form or human form, or their powerful spiritual senses, they all dissipated after the light shone on them. In a rage, the 5 of them attacked together and instantly destroyed all the strange beasts that appeared around them. This destructive power made everyone's faces change dramatically. However, since Ba and the others wanted to kill them, they naturally had more tricks up their sleeves. In fact, they released the strange beasts just to delay a little bit of time. Although the speed at which the strange beasts were destroyed was unexpectedly fast, it was enough for them to launch an extremely powerful attack. An item appeared in each of their hands. This item surged with an extremely powerful aura. This aura was not inferior to the strange item Zi Chen had used before. At this moment, under the urging of their extremely powerful spiritual senses, this item instantly exploded and turned into an unimaginable destructive force. These were 7 destructive storms. In the next moment, they swept toward the 5 people. Wherever the destructive storms passed, the light pillars released by the 5 people were instantly suppressed. After being suppressed, they shattered. Soon, the light pillars that had just spread out disappeared. The light on the 5 people was also shattered by the destructive storms. Damn it, mysterious item, came from the storm, followed by a series of explosions. The sky was completely filled with the destructive storms, and the destructive energy was constantly raging. However, this was only the second attack. When the destructive aura of the storm dissipated a little, the 7 of them had already launched their third attack. This attack was also their most powerful attack, and that was their spiritual senses. The 7 of them had stayed here for thousands of years, and they had experienced the things that happened thousands of years ago. They had obtained techniques to strengthen their spiritual senses and many spiritual sense crystals, so their spiritual senses were naturally extremely powerful. Bright light rushed out from the 7 of them, and then turned into powerful attacks, rushing toward the destructive storms in front of them. Among the 7 spiritual senses, Ba transformed into a black tiger. At this moment, the black tiger spoke in human language and said loudly, "Attack the water and wood spirits first." The other strange beasts on the edge of the spiritual senses split up instantly upon hearing Ba's words, and rushed toward the wood and water spirits in a 4-3 formation. The wood and water spirits were resisting the destructive storms, and they were completely in a state of alert. At this moment, the powerful spiritual sense attacks were coming. Although they sensed it, they did not know how to defend themselves. They could only form a strong defense in their sea of consciousness. The 7 spiritual senses rushed in instantly, and then broke through the defense in their sea of consciousness in a domineering manner, and went straight into the deepest part of their sea of consciousness. Boom! Boom! After that, 2 earth-shattering explosions sounded between heaven and earth. At the moment of these explosions, the whole world seemed to tremble. The explosions were the heads of the wood and water spirits, and their spiritual senses were destroyed in an instant. The powerful and supposedly invincible spirits were actually killed under such circumstances. Once the news spread, it would definitely cause a stir in the world. Chapter 919. Dead. The spirit bodies were actually killed by such a scheme. They were powerful and were known to be invincible, but they were killed by those of the same level. They had almost no flaws. From their spiritual senses to their body to their primary power techniques, they were so powerful. But today, they were killed by a few people who they did not take seriously. The 3 people who were watching from the periphery felt a chill in their hearts. When they looked at the 7 people from the local forces again, their expressions were much more solemn. It should be known that if the 7 of them joined forces to attack one spirit body head-on, they might not be able to kill the spirit body even if they were besieging it at the same time. However, spiritual senses were an extremely fatal weakness. Once they were injured, they would be seriously injured. Once there was a problem, they would die. As for spiritual sense attacks, it was important to be able to defend against them. If they could defend against it, they would live. If they could not, they would die. The 7 people from the local forces clearly grasped this point and launched a fierce attack. This was considered to be using their advantage to attack the spirit body's weakness. One attack was effective. Die. After destroying the spiritual bodies, the 7 powerful spiritual senses returned once again. Because they had consumed too much energy just now, they were no longer solid and had become somewhat illusory. At this moment, a loud shout was heard. It was the spiritual body of the Jinn family who had reacted and launched a powerful attack. A towering golden blade slashed down with unimaginable power. It went straight for the 7 people. This attack was actually 1 against 7. Obviously, he was extremely angry. At the same time, he was extremely confident in his attack. In the face of this attack, the 7 people were only spiritual senses. Naturally, it was impossible for them to block it. They tried their best to dodge, but 2 illusory figures were still cut by the golden blade. With a puff, the 2 figures dissipated. 2 of the 7 people who were standing in the distance immediately vomited blood. Among them was Bai He. At the critical moment, she had blocked the attack for Ba. As soon as the attack ended, a sea of fire appeared in front of everyone. It was as if they were already in the fire domain. In the fire domain, there was a monstrous murderous intent. Everyone's vision was blocked in the fire domain. They could not see their surroundings, but their still powerful spiritual senses immediately sensed that this place was full of danger. After the attack, before they could recover their spiritual senses, there was a riot in the fire domain. Then, a terrifying aura swept through the fire domain. Hurry up and leave. Bai He sensed a ferocious aura rushing towards them. She pushed Hey-Ba with all her might. Hey-Ba, who was about to swallow the spirit crystal, was sent flying backwards. However, as soon as he left his original spot, he saw by his body explode. The exploding by his body was still burning with flames. These flames were also attacks. As they burned by his body, they also burned by his spiritual will. White Lotus. Hey-Ba couldn't help but shout. At this moment, the earth began to tremble and a whistling sound came from the sky. Huge, earthen yellow rocks fell from the sky towards the fire domain. These rocks were like meteorites, and when they fell, sharp whistling sounds could be heard. After that, there was a series of tremors. Hey-Ba and the others' faces fell, and they raised their strongest defenses. At the same time, they waved their sleeves, summoning more mutant beasts. They circled around them, blocking the attacks for them. However, when they rushed out of the fire domain, their faces were pale and their hearts were filled with fear. They looked at each other and found that there were only 5 of them left. The other 2 knew that the fire domain had disappeared, but they didn't appear. The fire domain disappeared, and the meteorites stopped falling from the sky. The spiritual body of the Jinn family stood in the middle, and the 2 spiritual bodies of fire and earth stood to the side, coldly looking at the 5 people in front of them. The battle was 3 against 5, but the 3 spiritual bodies were more powerful. On the other hand, the other 5 people were still in fear. The spiritual body's power had already been demonstrated. They had launched a sneak attack and killed 2 of them. However, after taking all kinds of attacks, the spiritual bodies still managed to kill 2 of them. The 2 sides didn't speak, but the murderous intent surging around them said it all. The 3 spiritual bodies didn't have much sadness on their faces. It was the same for the local forces. The only one who was sad was Hey-Ba, because he died for him. After a round of attacks, the power of rules around the Golden Book decreased a lot. Just as the murderous intent between the 2 sides surged to a limit, and a second round of battle was about to happen, Hey-Ba suddenly said, "Why don't we make it a draw?" Make it a draw? Hey-Ba's words startled everyone. The Jinn family person in front of them said coldly, "That's right, everyone's goal is the heavenly book. The situation is clear now, as long as the power of rules disappears, the heavenly book will appear." Hey-Ba said. The spiritual body of the Hua family looked at him coldly and asked, "So what?" Hey-Ba asked back, "Don't you think that if we fight now, both sides will suffer?" The spiritual body of the 2 family suddenly laughed, "Both sides will suffer? You're not worthy." Hey-Ba said, "We admit that we can't kill you, but if the 5 of us work together, we can injure the 3 of you to varying degrees. At that time, I'm afraid the 3 of you won't have it easy." As he spoke, Hey-Ba's gaze fell on Genshin and the other 2. His meaning was obvious: if they continued to fight, the 3 of them would benefit. Seeing that the 3 of them didn't immediately agree, Hey-Ba said, "What, do you want to take revenge for those 2? As far as I know, the relationship between you guys isn't that good." Jinn family's spiritual body suddenly laughed and said coldly, "Our relationship is indeed not good, and we have no intention of taking revenge. However, we, spiritual bodies, will never compromise or be threatened. Even more so, we will not compromise with others after a sneak attack." Hey-Ba's expression changed immediately. "You don't care about the big picture." The spiritual body of the Jinn family still sneered, "The big picture? What is the big picture? After talking so much nonsense, I'm sure you've recovered all your spiritual senses." The other 4 people's expressions changed at this moment. Remember, spiritual bodies will never be threatened. After saying that, the 3 spiritual bodies' eyes flashed with cold light, and a strong aura surged around them as they rushed towards the 5 people. "You won't let us live, so we'll let you die." Hey-Ba's expression became extremely ferocious. Then, the strange beast appeared again, ready to be killed by the 3 of them. At the same time, the 5 of them quickly retreated, and the spiritual senses that had just recovered were also accumulating power, ready to continue the attack just now. Obviously, the 5 of them were ruthless and wanted to attack one of them with all their strength. On the outside, the 3 people who were watching the show immediately changed their expressions. If the 2 sides really fought to the death, then the 3 of them would definitely benefit in the end. If the 2 sides really suffered, then the three of them would have to take action. Although in the outside world, they wouldn't fall out with the five elements forces, in this world where no one set foot, even if all the spiritual bodies died, no one would know the cause of death. The expressions of the three people immediately changed. At this moment, the tyrant body also glanced at the heavenly book in front of him, because all the battles were because of the heavenly book. But just as his gaze fell on the heavenly book, the tyrant body's expression changed greatly, and there was an incredible expression in his eyes. His voice also became stuttering. Zichen, why are you here? The tyrant body's stuttering voice clearly penetrated the ears of the two people next to him, and they immediately turned their heads and looked at the heavenly book. Sure enough, when the two of them saw Zichen, their expressions changed drastically, and they exclaimed, Zichen, it's you. When did you come? The other people who were fighting also heard the exclamation of the two people. After retreating, they stopped fighting and turned their heads. At a glance, they saw Zichen approaching the heavenly book. Damn it, Zichen, it's you. Stay away from the heavenly book. After seeing Zichen, the Hua family's spiritual body was the first to roar. However, Zichen didn't seem to hear his roar, and he didn't even look at him. The feeling of being ignored made the Hua family's spiritual body extremely unhappy. He fell into a rage and was ready to attack Zichen. Wait. Beside him, the Jin family's spiritual body suddenly said, he's dispelling the power of the rules. As soon as this was said, everyone's expression changed, and they looked at Zichen again. Sure enough, they saw that he was dispelling the power of the rules, and Zichen was so focused that he didn't even look at the others. The Jin family's spiritual body waved his hand and said softly, ignore him for now. Wait until he dispels the power of the rules. Outside the golden light ball, Zichen was constantly dispelling the power of the rules around him. In the eyes of everyone, this speed should be extremely fast, but the focused Zichen's face was obviously dissatisfied. Under the strong dispelling, the power of the rules disappeared very slowly. Zichen seemed to be a little impatient, and he tried to snatch the heavenly book again and again, but he was blocked by the power of the rules. Therefore, Zichen was angry. Suddenly, his body emitted a dazzling golden light. This golden light was like a bright golden sun, and it actually made people lose their minds for a moment. However, when they looked at Zichen again, their eyes widened to the limit. Everyone's face was full of shock and disbelief because in front of Zichen, two golden light spots floated out, and these two light spots were the heavenly book. Heavenly book, 2 pages of the heavenly book. Zichen actually has 2 pages of the heavenly book on him. After seeing the 2 pages of the heavenly book in front of Zichen, everyone felt their hearts twitch fiercely, and their hearts beat violently. Zichen had 1 page of the heavenly book on him, which made them determined to kill him. However, they didn't expect that Zichen would take out 2 pages of the heavenly book in front of them. As soon as the 2 pages of the heavenly book were taken out, the greed in everyone's heart completely emerged. This kind of emergence couldn't be suppressed, and it couldn't be suppressed. Therefore, they didn't wait for the power of the rules on the 3rd page of the heavenly book to dissipate, and they launched what they thought was the most powerful attack on Zichen. This powerful attack bypassed the power of the rules and landed on Zichen's body. Terrifying attacks appeared one after another, but Zichen didn't seem to notice. He didn't dodge, and these attacks came from behind or in front of him. In the next moment, the attacks landed on Zichen, but a strange situation happened in the next moment. These attacks actually passed through Zichen, and they didn't hurt him at all. Moreover, the power of the rules flashed on Zichen's body. Chapter 920. The Power of Rules. The power of rules had actually appeared on Zichen's body. This was an unacceptable fact. However, this was the truth. Zichen's body was flashing with the power of rules. This power of rules had blocked the previous attacks for him. Everyone was unwilling to give up and continued to attack. Even if the sky and earth trembled and the space was constantly distorted and on the verge of shattering, they could not shake Zichen in the slightest. Moreover, after Zichen took out 2 pages of the heavenly book, the power of rules on the front page of the heavenly book dissipated at a much faster speed. Seeing that the power of rules on this page of the heavenly book was about to dissipate, everyone gave up on attacking. Zichen might be strange now, But as long as the seal of the heavenly book was broken, the power of rules would naturally dissipate. At that time, it would be much easier to kill Zichen. Everyone was ready to kill Zichen and snatch the heavenly book. At this moment, killing Zichen was naturally the top priority because Zichen had 2 pages of the heavenly book. In front of everyone, the power of rules on the heavenly book finally dissipated, and the complete heavenly book appeared in front of everyone's eyes. This was the art of spiritual cultivation, which could allow one to cultivate a perfect spiritual sense. The moment the heavenly book appeared, everyone once again launched a powerful attack. This attack was extremely terrifying. The surging aura almost tore the space here apart. Then, many attacks crazily fell on Zichen. At this moment, a group of more than 10 people attacked together. Once the attacks landed on Zichen, he would definitely die. However, in the face of so many powerful attacks, Zichen did not seem to notice. Instead, the joy on his face became even more intense. Then, under everyone's gaze, Zichen reached out and took the page of the heavenly book. At this moment, other attacks fell. In everyone's eyes, Zichen was completely willing to sacrifice his life for the heavenly book. However, what happened next left everyone dumbfounded. After Zichen took the heavenly book, he put away all 3 pages of the heavenly book. When the attacks landed on him, they still passed through his body like phantoms. The power of the rules on Zichen's body had completely disappeared, but the numerous attacks still didn't land on him. At this moment, without the power of the rules, everyone could clearly see that the Zichen in front of them was like an illusion. How could this be? Everyone was puzzled. The heavenly tomes were right in front of him, and so was Zichen. Why couldn't he attack them? Just as everyone was wondering what was going on, another person appeared in their line of sight. It was the alien tribe Devil Ape. At this moment, the Devil Ape was continuously retreating towards Zichen. Zichen's face was still filled with joy. After taking the heavenly book, he turned around. With his back facing the crowd, he looked forward with his cold eyes. In the crowd's line of sight, figures appeared one after another. These people were from various forces. They were holding weapons, and their auras were surging around their bodies. Their eyes flashed with greed as they attacked Zichen. In addition to the human cultivators, there were also some strange beasts. They also charged towards Zichen. In the face of so many attacks, Zichen's body flashed with golden light. Then, he clenched his fist and punched out. Every punch that he threw out contained an extremely powerful force. All the attacks that came into contact with this punch were scattered. Zichen, who was throwing out punches, either activated his perfect strength or perfect origin energy. Against the crowd, it was a situation of complete suppression. In front of the crowd, the attacks were extremely intense. However, they could only see the figures and could not hear the sounds. I know. The heavenly book is not here at all. It is in another space. Now, we are in a different space from Zichen. Looking at Zichen in front of them, Ba suddenly understood and said, "This is a scam." No wonder everyone could not get the heavenly book so many times. It is because the heavenly book is not in this space. If it is not in this space, how did Zichen get it? Someone beside him asked. Zichen must have relied on the other 2 pages of the heavenly book to get the heavenly book. There seems to be some kind of connection between the heavenly books. Zichen relied on this connection to find the real space where the heavenly book is. However, we are in the wrong place, Ba explained. Yes, it must be so. Otherwise, this situation would not have happened. Moreover, our people are obviously following Zichen to the space where the heavenly book is, Tyrant Body said loudly. Then what are you waiting for? Let's go. Immediately, a shout was heard. After that, a group of strong people began to use special means to contact their own people. However, they tried to contact a few people, but there was no news. They should be dead. Go back, go in the opposite direction, Ba said loudly after contacting the strange beasts that were not dead. Everyone returned with the same goal. That was to find Zichen and kill Zichen. After returning, they naturally wouldn't have internal strife anymore. Moreover, they all displayed their extreme speed and didn't hold back at all. because no one dared to guarantee that those people would be able to stop Zichen. If Zichen killed everyone and left, then wanting to find Zichen again would be completely impossible. Visual change, turn around. When the heavenly book appeared, Zichen was indeed stunned because he did feel the aura of the heavenly book. However, in the next moment, the heavenly book was taken away by the rules. The spirit bodies and others chased after it. At that moment, Zichen's face had a strange expression. This was because in his perception, the aura of the heavenly book was moving in the opposite direction. However, in Zichen's eyes, the heavenly book was flying forward. In that instant, Zichen's mind was in a mess. He didn't know if he should trust his perception or his own eyes. As such, he paused for a moment. During that pause, the chaotic battle between the trial takers and the exotic beasts broke out. Zichen looked at the heavenly book flying away and felt the aura of the heavenly book. He pondered. The heavenly book appeared once every 1,000 years. Until now, it had appeared more than 10 times or even more than 100 times. However, no one had succeeded in obtaining the heavenly book after so many times. Obviously, there was a reason. Zichen guessed that the reason was that they could not sense the aura of the true heavenly book, so they followed the fake heavenly book. This led to no results every time. It was this guess that made Zichen change his mind. He turned around and headed in the opposite direction. At that moment, he chose to trust his perception because this perception came from another heavenly book. As for what he saw with his eyes, it was not necessarily the truth. Therefore, Zichen followed the aura of the heavenly book all the way. He turned around and followed the aura of the heavenly book. He was watched like a monkey by the people chasing behind him. However, after chasing for hundreds of thousands of miles, Zichen's figure disappeared in front of everyone and arrived at another place. In this place, Zichen saw the heavenly book floating quietly in the air. When it saw the heavenly book, the devil ape was shocked and surprised. Zichen was obviously ecstatic. Therefore, he dashed forward and prepared to take the heavenly book. However, there was the power of the rules around the heavenly book. Zichen had no choice but to use his perfect origin energy to weaken these rules. However, just as Zichen began to dispel the power of the rules, the trial takers and strange beasts caught up with him. When they saw the heavenly book, they were first puzzled, then greedy. Therefore, Zichen hurriedly dispelled the rules on the heavenly book while the devil ape was in charge of blocking everyone. Everyone also saw the rules on the heavenly book, so they were not in a hurry to go forward. Instead, they decided to kill the devil ape first. However, as the sky-splitting battle ape, the devil ape was not that easy to kill. However, in the fierce battle, the devil ape was also retreating. Therefore, Zichen was anxious. He used his spiritual thoughts to form an absolute open area around him. Then, he urged the energy around him to make the golden light extremely dazzling. Then, he took the opportunity to take out the other 2 pages of the heavenly book. Zichen took out 2 pages of the heavenly book and successfully avoided everyone. However, he did not expect to be seen by the spirit bodies in another space. Zichen thought that he had done it flawlessly. No one knew that he had 3 pages of the heavenly book. After dispelling all the rules, Zichen hurriedly put away the heavenly book. This page of the spirit cultivation technique naturally entered Zichen's sea of consciousness. After that, the devil ape was no match for everyone. It retreated until it reached Zichen. Zichen turned around. His eyes were surging with killing intent as he began to kill everyone. Zichen was almost 1 punch per person. He either killed them or beat them until they lost their combat ability. As he attacked crazily, Zichen was still extremely excited. He had obtained the 3 pages of the heavenly book so easily and did not have to fight a group of spirit bodies head-on. This was really a good thing. Zichen guessed that the other party should still be chasing after the fake heavenly book. Therefore, he planned to end the battle quickly and leave quietly. No one would know that he had obtained the heavenly book. Don't hold back. Kill them quickly. If they inform the spirit bodies, it will be troublesome, Zichen said to the devil ape. The devil ape nodded. It knew the severity of the matter. Therefore, it waved its staff and attacked. After the spirit cultivation technique entered Zichen's sea of consciousness, a golden light surged out before Zichen could deliberately refine it. This golden light was a perfect spiritual sense. After it merged with Zichen's spiritual sense, it changed Zichen's spiritual sense. At this moment, Zichen was on a killing spree. His body was flashing with this golden light. His attacks were also dazzling. Within the golden light, there was perfect essence force and perfect strength. At this moment, with the perfection of his essence, chi, and spirit, Zichen felt that his body had endless power. Moreover, with the changes in his spiritual sense, Zichen was changing every minute and every second. This change was most obvious in his combat ability. With every attack, Zichen felt that his strength and combat ability were increasing. At first, after Zichen's punches, there were still survivors. But soon, after Zichen's punches, there were no survivors. Die. Zichen faced a human-origin Xiantian realm martial artist from the Hua clan. Previously, Zichen was evenly matched with him. But now, with another punch, he directly sent him flying. Then, Zichen formed a seal with his hand. A dazzling golden sun appeared in front of him. With the speed of teleportation, it arrived in front of the human origin stage martial artist from the Hua clan. Puff! The golden sun streaked across, and a light sound was heard. The human origin stage martial artist's body was directly split into two by the golden sun. Facing a human origin Xiantian realm martial artist, Zichen actually used 2 attacks to kill him. When the people from the Sword Sect and the tyrannical Dao clan saw this, their expressions changed drastically. Their eyes were filled with fear. Zichen's eyes were full of killing intent. With a flash of light in his hand, the dragon soul spear appeared. After a loud dragon roar, he struck out with the sky-piercing spear art. The spear in his hand was like a golden dragon. It directly pierced through the void and pierced the chest of a man in black. At the same time, the devil ape also waved its black staff. It smashed the void and killed an assassin. These assassins who were good at hiding were very powerful. Unfortunately, they were unlucky to meet the devil ape who had the delusion breaker eye. Chapter 921. This voice sounded very abruptly. Zichen was startled, and his expression immediately changed. Then, he, who was bathed in blood, saw that at the end of the world in front of him, tall figures were leaving. These figures were extremely tall and majestic, comparable to bears. They were body cultivators and formed their own force. Zichen's perfect body was the perfect constitution among body cultivators. Zichen was also a body cultivator. Back in the dark world, there was a strong body cultivator who protected Zichen. In this world, so far, there was no conflict between body cultivators and Zichen. At this moment, the body cultivator reminded Zichen. Zichen was naturally grateful. He did not doubt that there was false information in the words. He, who originally wanted to kill all of them, decisively chose to leave immediately. Let's go. He pulled the demon ape and abandoned the people chasing after him. They turned into a stream of light and headed toward the exit of this space. This was the space of the world where the heavenly book was. It was very small. Once they were surrounded by a group of spirits, Zichen would be in danger if he could not use his extreme step technique. What's wrong? Seeing that Zichen's expression suddenly became serious, the demon ape could not help but ask. The spirits are here, Zichen said. So fast. The demon ape was shocked, and then asked, what do we do now? A cold light flashed in Zichen's eyes, and he said coldly, of course, we kill them. Kill the spirits. The demon ape looked at Zichen. It's not like we haven't killed them before. The last time we killed one, I didn't feel satisfied. Now that the opportunity is in front of us, we must kill a few more. The more spirits die, the more heartbroken the 5 elements forces will be and not be so arrogant. Zichen's voice became colder. There are so many of them. How can we kill them? Zichen, who was flying, said in a low voice, there's no hurry. Let's think about it first. A group of spirit bodies was rushing over. They were extremely excited. Zichen had 3 pages of the heavenly book. Once they killed him, they would be able to obtain 3 extreme powers. Now, The truth was out. Zichen's perfect physique was the first-generation perfect physique. He had the perfect power physique. As for the other one, he had the perfect elemental energy technique. The third one was the spirit cultivation technique. Physique, elemental energy, and spiritual will. He had refined all 3 pages of the heavenly book to perfection. This shocked the spirit body. If that was the case, would Zichen still have any flaws? Fortunately, Zichen was only at the origin core realm, and he had just obtained the heavenly book not long ago. He was still unable to reach a flawless state. If he could kill Zichen now, Zichen was very confident. Moreover, once he killed Zichen, it would be perfect and flawless. Kill. We must kill Zichen. The 3 spirit bodies were transmitting their voices. This is our chance. Our only chance to soar into the sky. Kill Zichen and everyone else. Heiba's spiritual will was filled with intense emotions. In this situation, we have to work together. Genshin and the other 2 were also transmitting their voices. At this moment, the group of 11 had formed 3 alliances. Over there. Zichen is over there. Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out. Everyone looked in the direction of the cry and saw 2 figures, one gold and one black, flying at high speed. It was Zichen and the devil ape. Stop. Seeing Zichen, everyone shouted. However, if they didn't shout, the 2 of them wouldn't be very fast. With a shout, the 2 of them sped up a lot and headed straight for the exit. Just as the 2 of them disappeared from sight, more people rushed over. These were the trial takers from the various forces. There were more than 10 of them. As for the mutated beasts from the local forces, there was not a single one. They were all killed by Zichen and the devil ape. When everyone arrived, they went straight for Zichen and the devil ape. With this, the spirit bodies no longer had any doubts and chased after Zichen. Just as everyone was rushing towards Zichen, a figure rushed out of the void. It was a man in golden clothes. He looked very unfamiliar and very handsome. After he appeared, he rushed towards the 3 people from the 5 elements force. Moreover, when he rushed over, he attacked the spirit bodies. You're courting death. Seeing the man in golden clothes suddenly appear, the spirit body of the Hua family immediately had a cold expression. Before the 2 of them could attack, he took a step forward and launched a powerful attack. Boom! Following a loud explosion, the 2 of them exchanged blows. Torrential energy surged out. The man in golden clothes was knocked back, and the spirit body of the Hua family was also knocked back. The 2 of them were actually evenly matched. Such a scene made the eyes of the others flash with a strange light. They all felt that the newcomer was extremely extraordinary. However, as long as it wasn't Zichen, it wouldn't attract too much attention. Therefore, a strange light flashed in everyone's eyes. After all, the newcomer wasn't looking for them. Therefore, they didn't stop and went straight in the direction Zichen escaped. Let's end this quickly. The spirit body of the Jin family and the 2 family didn't stop either. After leaving behind cold words, they left with the group of people. You dare to cause trouble for me? You're courting death. The spirit body of the Hua family gritted his teeth. Endless killing intent burst out from his eyes. Die. The man in golden clothes' expression was cold as he rushed towards the spirit body of the Hua family. His attack was simple and direct. He just threw out a punch. Bright fist light surged with an extremely terrifying aura as it directly hit the spirit body of the Hua family. The 2 of them continued to exchange blows. Rumbling sounds could be heard as terrifying energy surged between heaven and earth. The man in golden clothes' attack method was completely close combat. After he threw out a punch, as the fist light was dissolved, his whole body flashed forward and attacked with elbow strikes, joint strikes, and finger strikes. At the same time, the man in golden clothes also threw out a punch, a palm strike, and a kick. His attack method was completely close combat. Moreover, his close combat methods had reached an extremely high level. Furthermore, every attack that the other party made was perfectly coordinated with the next attack. It was a complete close combat combo attack. Golden light flashed. His opponent was like a light shadow as he threw out a perfect combo. Peng! In the continuous combo, the spirit body of the Hua family was forced to retreat. In the process of retreating, the fire protecting his body also exploded. After the explosion, the spirit body of the Hua family spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood was burning like fire. However, the two of them also distanced themselves at this moment. The spirit body of the Hua family's expression changed as he cried out, "Perfect body, you're Zi Chen." The man in golden clothes snorted coldly. The golden light around his body surged again as the powerful energy in his body surged. Then, a terrifying pressure of a perfect body appeared. At this moment, not only was the spirit body of the Hua family shocked, but even Zi Chen, who was hiding in the dark and looking for an opportunity to kill, looked at the man in golden clothes in surprise. This was because the other party was using perfect strength, the true strength of a perfect body. Zi Chen couldn't believe that in this world, other than him, there was someone else who had a perfect body. Furthermore, the other party's perfect body had clearly evolved to the extreme. The power in his body was extremely pure. If the two of them fought fiercely with their perfect bodies, Zi Chen, who was a realm lower, would definitely be defeated. In addition, the other party's attack methods of using power were endless. This was something that Zi Chen could not compare to. The man in golden clothes didn't admit it, but he didn't deny it either. After a cold snort, he rushed towards the spirit body of the Hua family again. However, this time, before he could reach him, the spirit body of the Hua family had already used his attack methods. "Mph, I don't care who you are or what you're trying to do. If you dare to provoke me, only death awaits you." The spirit body of the Hua family was furious. He began to form a mysterious seal with his hands. The surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi fell into a state of frenzy and gathered towards the spirit body of the Hua family from all directions. A storm immediately formed around the spirit body of the Hua family. This was a firestorm, and within the storm was a sea of violent heaven and earth spirit chi. This heaven and earth spirit chi was already extremely violent, and when it reached the spirit body of the Hua family, it became even more violent. As a seal fell, the violent fire energy was compressed into a large fire seal. Zi Chen couldn't be more familiar with this seal. Back then, Hua Yang had almost killed him with this seal. The only time he had been defeated by someone of the same level was when he faced this seal. As soon as the seal appeared, the energy surged violently towards the man in golden clothes. The expression of the man in golden clothes became even colder, and the golden light around him became even more dazzling. Facing this attack, he didn't form any seals. Instead, he clenched his hands into fists. When the fire seal arrived, he displayed a type of physical skill. This type of physical skill moved almost every part of the body. It mobilized all the energy in the body, including the blood, bones, meridians, and cells. Then, all the energy gathered on his fists. The moment the physical skill was completed, a powerful and terrifying aura surged from his fists. As he punched out with his fists, a dazzling fist light left his body. Seeing this fist light, Zi Chen almost cried out in surprise. This fist technique was very similar to the fist technique that the barbarian god had passed down to him. However, at this moment, the one displayed by the man in golden clothes was clearly more advanced than Zi Chen's. Naturally, it was much more powerful. The fist light collided with the fire seal in the sky, resulting in a loud explosion. The violent energy continued to wreak havoc, distorting the space to the limit. After this attack, the two of them were forced to retreat. The Hua family's spiritual body cried out, "No, you're not Zi Chen. You only have a perfect body, but you don't have perfect origin energy. You're in the human origin realm. You're born with a perfect body in the human origin realm." The man in golden clothes looked at the Hua family's spiritual body coldly and said, "The spiritual body's combat strength is definitely strong. I can only restrain you, but I can't kill you. If you don't attack, then I'll leave." The man in golden clothes' words were a little strange. He seemed to be talking to a third person present. However, the Hua family's spiritual body looked around. There was no third person present. Just as he snorted and was about to say that he was deliberately mystifying things, the void behind him silently broke open. Then, a terrifying energy surged out from behind him. Sensing the energy behind him, the Hua family's spiritual body's expression changed drastically. He took a step forward at lightning speed, then turned around. He mobilized the surging power of flames in his body and struck forward. However, at this moment, the void behind the Hua family's spiritual body broke open again. After it broke open, a golden light silently appeared and aimed at the Hua family's spiritual body's back. The surging attack in front of the Hua family's spiritual body suddenly dissipated like the tide. It turned out that everything was an illusion. Not good. The Hua family's spiritual body cried out in his heart. Then, he mobilized all the power of flames in his body and formed a defense behind his back. Phut. Chapter 922. The defense that the Hua family's spiritual body had just formed was broken by the golden light. Then, the golden light continued forward and pierced through the Hua family's spiritual body's back. But before the golden light could penetrate his back, the Hua family's spiritual body let out a loud cry. Flames rose around his body as he broke free from the golden light's attack and flew forward. The Hua family's spiritual body had dodged the fatal attack, but the energy in his body had also rushed into the attack. The two energies were almost perfect in quality. They collided with each other and exploded. Boom! The two forces exploded within the Hua clan's spiritual body, and a huge bloody hole appeared in his chest. His body was almost blown into two pieces. Inside his body, all of his internal organs were crushed by the energy. The Hua family's spiritual body coughed up blood, and the blood he spat out contained fragments of his internal organs. While he was coughing up blood, the spiritual body in front of him turned around and flew backward. He looked in front of him with anger and shock. In front of him, the black-robed Zichen was putting away his spear. His cold and murderous eyes were filled with surprise. You! Seeing that it was Zichen, the Hua family's spiritual body was in disbelief. Shouldn't Zichen be being chased by other spiritual bodies? Why would he appear here? He only said one word before he coughed up blood again. At the same time, a large amount of flame-like blood gushed out from the wound in his chest. The Hua family's spiritual body had a big hole in his chest. It looked extremely miserable, but it was not. At the critical moment, he protected his spiritual sense and blocked the destruction of the two energies. At the moment, he only looked a little embarrassed, but it was definitely not to the point where his life was in danger. But if it was a Xiantian realm warrior, there was no way he could survive Zichen's sneak attack. From this, it could be seen that the spiritual body was indeed very powerful. Whether it was in terms of attack or defense, it was not comparable to a Xiantian realm warrior. The Hua family's spiritual body kept coughing up blood and could not speak a complete sentence. Not far from Zichen, the golden-robed man said coldly, "Let's end this quickly. The devil ape won't be able to hold on for long. Let's end this quickly." Zichen nodded, his eyes flashing with killing intent. "You want to kill me? Dream on." The Hua clan's spiritual body finally let out a complete sound. After that, he urged the spiritual body to mobilize the surrounding spiritual energy in order to heal his injuries. Although the injuries were not fatal, they would affect his origin energy. After all, many of his meridians had been crushed. The surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi madly converged towards him. His injuries healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. This kind of recovery speed was almost comparable to swallowing a treasure pill. However, it was a pity that his opponent was not one person, but two. Furthermore, their combat power was comparable to that of a spirit body. Therefore, even though he kept retreating while recovering from his injuries, he could not completely shake off the two of them. Zichen and the golden-robed man caught up to him one after another. One of them used perfect strength and displayed the most powerful and perfect combo. Every strike would cause a tremor to resound between heaven and earth, and every strike would cause a large amount of golden light to flash. It was very impressive. The other used two types of perfect origin energy. Two types of perfect origin energy appeared in the same technique, causing the power of the technique itself to increase by several times. The destructive power that was produced was not any weaker than the golden-robed man's attack. In just 3 breaths, the Hua clan's spiritual body was sent flying. The surging heaven and earth spirit chi around him was also scattered. As he was sent flying, he coughed up blood continuously. His injuries worsened, and his eyes were filled with shock. At this moment, he was fighting 1 against 2 while injured. He had no chance of winning at all. Instead, his life was in danger. Therefore, after being sent flying, he decided to escape. However, with Zichen and the golden-robed man, who both had extreme speed, it was undoubtedly impossible for the Hue clan's spiritual body to escape under such circumstances. Before he could escape for a few miles, he was hit by the 2 of them again. His injuries became even more serious. Zichen is here. Zichen is here. Knowing that there was no hope of escaping, a hint of madness appeared in the Hue clan's spiritual body's eyes. He released his spiritual thoughts and sent 2 thunderous voice transmissions into the distance. After sending the voice transmissions, he no longer dodged. Instead, he took the initiative to rush toward Zichen. Die, you guy with the 3 pages of the heavenly book. As he rushed over, the Hue clan's spiritual body was still roaring. The Hue clan's spiritual body's roar caused a hint of surprise to appear on the golden-robed man's face. He glanced at Zichen with great surprise. However, the Hue clan's spiritual body's plan only had a slight effect. After that, the 2 of them worked together to launch a powerful attack. Under the full force of the attack, the injured Hue clan's spiritual body could not withstand it. The number of bloody holes on his body increased, and half of his body was almost cut in half by Zichen. The Hue clan's spiritual body's thunderous voice reverberated between heaven and earth. Naturally, it reached the ears of the spiritual bodies chasing after him. When they heard this voice, their expressions suddenly changed. They looked at the figure in front of them that was gradually catching up. However, they discovered many things that were not right. For example, why did Zichen not use the heavenly thunder wings but only use extreme speed to escape? He knew that the distance between them was getting closer, but he did not increase his speed. That's a doppelganger. Let's go back. Naturally, there was an extremely special existence in the group. After discovering the suspicious points, they further confirmed that the one in front of them was a doppelganger. However, the demonic ape was real, and the one they were looking for was Zichen. The group of spiritual bodies began to speed up their retreat. As for the original Xiantian realm warriors, they continued to chase after the demonic ape. They were determined to kill it. After the demonic ape fled for tens of thousands of miles, it stopped running. Beside it, Zichen's doppelganger dissipated. The demonic ape turned around, its scarlet eyes filled with killing intent. At this moment, it held a black rod in one hand and a strange object in the other. It took the initiative to rush towards the dozen or so Xiantian realm warriors. Boom! The flames that filled the sky were dispersed by the combined efforts of Zichen and the golden-robed man. The Hue clan's spiritual body was revealed. Seizing the opportunity, Zichen displayed extreme speed. He became one with his spear and rushed forward like a cold bolt of lightning. With a puff, the spear light flashed and the Hue clan's spiritual body was split into 2. He flew into the sky with the head of his spiritual sense. As for abdomen, who contained Yuan Li, he fell to the ground with the lower half of his body. With his body split and his combat power completely lost, the Hue clan's spiritual body finally showed fear on its face. It screamed. In the face of death, it was no longer calm. Die! This time, it was Zichen who spoke. A golden light rushed out from his sea of consciousness. After this golden light appeared, it turned into a solid sword. It was a golden sword that was incomparably dazzling. It went straight for the Hue clan's spiritual body. This was the spiritual sense technique Zichen had learned from Mr. Wu. At that time, Zichen had almost died from this technique. Now, he was using this technique against the enemy. The golden sword went straight into the Hue clan's spiritual body. Then, it broke through its layers of defense and went straight to the center of its soul. The quality of Zichen's spiritual sense was naturally higher than that of the Hue clan's spiritual body. After it turned into a solid attack, its power was naturally stronger. Boom! The powerful golden sword pierced into the depths of its opponent's soul. Because the power was too strong, the Hue clan's spiritual body's head exploded. The third spiritual body of the 5 Elements faction was destroyed. At this time, The other spiritual bodies rushed over and saw this scene. The death of the Hue clan's spiritual body caused their expressions to change drastically. The Jin and Tu clan's spiritual bodies' expressions became extremely ugly. This was because they had degenerated from the strongest alliance to the weakest. After killing the Hue clan's spiritual body, Zichen put away his spear and turned around. His cold eyes fell on the newcomers. When the two sides met, there was naturally not much to say. It was a life-and-death battle. One side wanted to seize the treasure, and the other side wanted to protect it. Before Zichen was killed, there would naturally be no internal strife. A group of people rushed towards Zichen and shouted. They wanted Zichen to not run away. At the same time, Zichen made an unexpected decision. He did not run away. Instead, he held his spear and rushed towards the crowd. "You're courting death." A cold light flashed in everyone's eyes as they launched powerful attacks. Facing so many attacks, a pair of lightning wings appeared on Zichen's back. He displayed his extreme speed and after dodging a few attacks, he rushed towards one of the people. Zichen was attacking the Tu clan's spiritual body. Using his extreme speed, he arrived in front of his opponent and engaged in close combat. This was out of everyone's expectations. When everyone reacted, Zichen was already entangled with Tu clan's astral spirit body. Tu clan's astral spirit body was retreating while Zichen was advancing. While Zichen was advancing, Zichen was attacking. With the two types of essence force working together, they could break through his defense and injure him. The Tu clan's spiritual body's defense was slightly stronger than the others, but it still could not block Zichen's attacks. If the two sides continued to fight like this, the one who would die would definitely be the Tu clan's spiritual body. "Kill, don't worry." Seeing the two entangled, Heibi's eyes flashed with joy. Madness appeared on his face. This was even better for them as they could kill two at once. It was like killing two birds with one stone. The more spiritual bodies that died, the higher their chances. At that moment, a loud and clear sword cry rang out. Light flashed between the heavens and the earth, and a sword light like a waterfall appeared. As soon as the sword light appeared, it carried a strong sword will and went straight for Zichen. Clang! Zichen swept his spear and displayed the heaven-piercing spear art. Two types of perfect Yuan Qi surged on the spear and clashed with the sword ray. At the moment of impact, the two types of energy exploded, turning into a destructive storm that spread out in all directions. The Tu clan's spiritual body wanted to use this opportunity to retreat and increase the distance between them to fight with Zichen. However, Zichen flapped his lightning wings and rushed in front of him again. Two types of almost perfect Yuan Qi appeared as Zichen attacked his opponent. The Tu clan's spiritual body was knocked back and coughed out blood. Zichen flapped his wings and rushed forward to attack. The distance between the two was not less than a few steps. The other people's large-scale attacks would definitely hit the Tu clan's spiritual body. At this moment, in everyone's eyes, Zichen had the thought of dragging someone down with him even if he had to die. Attack! Kill! As the cold voice sounded, Heiba and the others finally seized the opportunity to attack. Powerful spiritual senses rushed out from the glabellas of the five of them. These spiritual senses transformed into various shapes in the air and charged towards Zichen. The attack speed of spiritual senses was faster than Yuan Qi. The few of them took advantage of the time when Zichen did not have enough energy for his next attack. Hence, this attack was almost impossible for Zichen to dodge. Once the five spiritual senses were released, they rushed towards Zichen with a terrifying aura. Previously, when they worked together, they could kill two spiritual bodies. Now that the five of them worked together, killing the origin core realm Zichen was even easier. Chapter 923. These five spiritual sense attacks were extraordinary. Zichen immediately felt danger approaching. After turning his head, his pupils shrunk, and he tried to use his extreme speed to dodge the spiritual sense attacks. Unfortunately, the spiritual sense attacks were too fast, and his extreme speed was useless now. Seeing Heiba and the others taking action, the others also gave up on attacking and stared at the front. Previously, when they worked together, they were able to kill two spiritual bodies. Now that the 5 of them were working together to deal with the origin core realm Zichen, they were confident that they could kill him in one hit. At this moment, everyone seemed to be waiting for the scene of Zichen's head exploding with a bang. If the battle continued like this, there was a 90% chance that Zichen would die. However, at this moment, Ba, who was leading the attack, suddenly transmitted his spiritual sense: 3 strikes, 3 kill Zichen, 2 kill the spiritual bodies. The 5 spiritual senses that were attacking Zichen suddenly split into 2 and attacked the spiritual body of 2 clan. However, they did not underestimate Zichen, and 3 of them went straight for Zichen. The 2 clan's spirit body had always been in a state of alert. He did not let his guard down even when the 5 of them attacked him with their spiritual senses. Just as 2 spiritual senses suddenly turned to attack him, his expression changed and he made some simple and effective defenses. In a flash, 3 spiritual senses rushed into Zichen's mind, and 2 of them went straight into the spiritual body of 2 clans' forehead. At the same time, a golden light like a waterfall appeared between heaven and earth. The golden light was extremely dazzling, and it emitted an extremely powerful and terrifying aura. It turned into a sharp blade and slashed towards Ba and the others. Wherever the sharp blade passed, ripples appeared in the space. This attack was extremely powerful. The one who attacked was the spiritual body of Jin clan, and its target was Ba and the others. However, when Ba and the others were scheming against Zichen, they naturally expected this to happen. They did not let their guard down and remained vigilant. After attacking with their spiritual senses, many strange beasts appeared around them. At this moment, these strange beasts rushed toward the golden blade, using their bodies to block the attack. However, everything was not over yet. Others started to plot against them. Tyrant Body also moved at this moment. His target was Ba and the others. He flashed and rushed towards Ba and the others. He launched an overbearing attack, wanting to destroy Ba and the others. Suddenly, the void was torn apart as a surge of murderous intent surged out. The assassin who was looking for a chance to kill also made his move, but his target was the 2 families' innate spirit body that was not far away from Zichen. The long sword on Genshin's back was unsheathed, and a sharp sword light shot towards Zichen. The void broke open again, and a golden figure appeared. The target was none other than the spiritual body of the Jin family. Chaos, complete chaos. After Ba and the others made their moves, everyone also made their moves. The gap between their attacks was less than a breath. If things went according to their plan, then this would be the result after they made their moves. Zichen would be killed by the 5 spiritual senses. The Jin family's innate spirit body and tyrant body would be able to kill at least 2 out of the 5 people in Ba's group, and most likely 3. Genshin added another strike because he was worried that if Zichen did not die, then the 5 spiritual senses and this strike would definitely kill Zichen. As for the 2 families' innate spirit body, he would be in a state of shock and be killed by the assassin's shortkill attack. In this way, the Jin family's innate spirit body would be the only one left in the 5 elements forces. Naturally, he would die in the next fight for the Heavenly Book. As for Ba and the other local forces, there would be 3 or possibly 2 people left. Their spiritual senses were relatively strong and could be a threat to the innate spirit body, but their attacks were not enough. Naturally, they would die in the end. In the end, there would only be 3 people left: Tyrant Body, Genshin, and the assassin. The 3 of them would fight for the 3 pages of the Heavenly Book. As for who it would belong to in the end, this was the final consideration. Even if the 3 of them split it equally in the end, they would each get a page. As for the perfect body, it was an unexpected existence. No one expected that there would be one hidden in the dark. After all, when they came, they only saw Zichen and thought that the person who fought the Hua family's innate spirit body was Zichen. This was the conclusion they came to in an instant after calculating each other. Then, they made their move. If this were to continue, the final winner would definitely be Genshin and the other 2. However, who knew that there would be an unforeseen event in the first round? Ba and company did not try their best to kill Zichen. Instead, they split up their spiritual senses and wanted to kill the 2 families' innate spirit body. The spiritual sense attack was the first to arrive. It rushed into the two families' innate spirit bodies' sea of consciousness. The latter's body shook violently. Layers of defense formed in the innate spirit body's sea of consciousness, blocking the two spiritual sense attacks with all its might. However, this way, the two families' innate spirit body did not have the opportunity to take the initiative to attack. The surging aura around him also receded like the tide. At this moment, the void broke open and killing intent surged. A sharp blade directly pierced into the back of the two families' innate spirit body's head. At this moment, the two families' innate spirit body was blocking the spiritual sense attack. The outer layer of defense formed was extremely weak. Under the shorekill attack, it was almost useless. The sharp blade pierced in without any accident. Then, a terrifying surge of energy directly slaughtered the two families' innate spirit body. When the two families' innate spirit body was slaughtered, the other two spiritual senses that entered also suffered unimaginable damage at this moment. With the two families' innate spirit body dead, the two spiritual senses that attacked him rushed out pathetically and wanted to return to their bodies. In Zichen's sea of consciousness, the spiritual senses were as vast as the sea. Just as the three spiritual senses attacked, Zichen's boundless spiritual senses instantly transformed into three sharp blades and rushed towards the three spiritual senses. The spiritual senses in Zichen's sea of consciousness clashed intensely. In the blink of an eye, they could exchange hundreds of blows. Although Zichen's spiritual sense blades were not as big as the three spiritual senses, their quality was much higher than the three spiritual senses. Zichen relied on the spiritual senses of his Dantian to block hundreds and thousands of attacks from the three spiritual senses. However, in the end, the spiritual senses of the three spiritual senses were still stronger. In the midst of the clash, Zichen's blades were clearly dimmed. Heibi's sinister laughter could be heard. Zichen, go and die. The three spiritual senses broke through the three blades formed by Zichen and rushed towards the center of Zichen's sea of consciousness. Once they reached there, Zichen would definitely die. However, at this moment, the three of them screamed as if they had seen a snake or a scorpion. They rushed out of Zichen's sea of consciousness. Moreover, when the three spiritual thoughts rushed out of the depths of Zichen's sea of consciousness, they seemed to have suffered heavy injuries and were obviously much dimmer. Buzz. Suddenly, a trembling sound came from the depths of Zichen's sea of consciousness. A page of the heavenly book flew above the sea of consciousness and a blinding golden light lit up the entire sea of consciousness. A strange and mighty force came out from the heavenly book and turned into a vibration force that spread throughout the entire sea of consciousness. Wherever the vibration force passed, Zichen felt as if he had been enlightened. His spirit was clear and he was in high spirits. The spiritual senses that had just been greatly exhausted were instantly recovered. On the other hand, Heiba and the other two screamed again when the vibration force passed through their mouths. Their bodies became even more illusory. Peng. The spiritual thoughts of one of them actually exploded in Zichen's sea of consciousness. After the explosion, the spiritual thoughts did not produce any destructive power. Instead, they turned into pure spiritual thoughts and gathered towards the heavenly book in the sky above his sea of consciousness. The other two flew out of Zichen's sea of consciousness by a hair's breadth. Their faces were full of fear. All of this happened very quickly. Just as the two spiritual senses rushed out, they met the spiritual sense that killed the two families' spiritual body. The four spiritual senses met in the air and returned to their physical bodies in a sorry state. Jianxin's sword fell on Zichen's body. Under the powerful attack, it broke through Zichen's defense. Because Zichen knew how to attack with spiritual senses, Zichen could still control his body while fighting back. The defense formed on his body was still very strong. However, this extremely strong defense was broken through by the sword. Then, the sword hit Zichen and broke through his body. At the same time, the powerful energy contained in the sword beam sent Zichen's body flying. After the battle ended, the Jin family's spiritual body on the other side struck out with a sharp blade that slashed through almost all the exotic beasts. At the same time, it struck a native faction's powerhouse and directly slashed his body apart. At the same time, the overlord body also shattered a person's body. Blood splattered. The Jin family's spiritual body that had just schemed against others was also sent flying by the perfect body and was severely injured. The battle almost happened in an instant and ended in an instant. However, in that instant, one of the spiritual bodies was killed and two of the native factions were killed. One died at the hands of Zichen, and the other was blasted apart by the overlord body before his spiritual senses could return to his body. The battle ended in an instant. Everyone subconsciously retreated and was completely on guard. Apart from some post-battle energy surging, there was no other sound. The scene turned into a 3-2-1 situation. Genshin and the other 2-3 from the native faction, Zichen and the perfect body. The weakest was the Five Elements faction, which was previously the strongest. Only the heavily injured Jin family's spiritual body was left. The other four had been schemed to death. Among the remaining people, the Jin family's spiritual body had the ugliest expression. From the strongest faction to the weakest, it was even in danger. His face was livid as his cold eyes swept across the crowd, but he didn't know what to say. Good, good, very good. He nodded as a cold glint surged in his eyes. He said coldly, "Consider yourself ruthless today. I don't want the heavenly book, but the Five Elements faction will definitely settle this score with you in the future." With that said, the Jin family's spiritual body flashed and left. However, at that moment, a golden light flashed as the perfect body stood in front of him. He said coldly, "You won't be able to leave today." A cold glint flashed in the Jin family's spiritual body's eyes as he said coldly, "How dare you stop me?" The perfect body shook his head and said, "I'm not stopping you, I'm killing you." With that said, he attacked the Jin family's spiritual body with all his might, as though there was an irreconcilable grudge between the two of them. With the perfect body against the Jin family's spiritual body, there were only 7 people left. The scene was 1 against 6. Zichen was 1, while the other party was 6. "Hey BA, die." However, under such circumstances, Zichen roared and charged at Hey BA with the Dragon Soul Spear, ignoring his injuries. Chapter 924. Hey BA was killed on the spot by Zichen with a single blow. His spiritual senses were damaged by the heavenly book, and before he could recover, Zichen attacked him. Although Hey BA was at the peak of the early stage of mortal origin stage, his combat power was not very strong. At most, he was on par with a Xiantian martial artist of the same level. He was still a distance away from a spirit body. His only reliance was his spiritual senses, but now his spiritual senses were also injured. 2 of them were injured by the assassins, and the other 2 were injured by the heavenly book. After Hey BA's death, Zichen did not let the other 2 go. He turned into a ray of light and dodged a weak attack. Then, he pointed at one of them. It was Wu Chang. He was lucky to still be alive. His sneak attack on Zichen had failed. Zichen pointed his finger, and a terrifying fingerprint appeared. Above the fingerprint, 2 types of perfect Yuanli were operating. The fingerprint easily broke through Wu Chang's defense and pointed at his forehead. Before his spiritual senses could escape, the fingerprint exploded. The turbulent destructive power swept over Wu Chang. Wu Chang screamed in pain and then went silent. When the destructive power dissipated, Wu Chang's body fell to the ground with a hole in his forehead. The last one was Zheng Qing. He was more cunning than the other 2. When he sensed that something was wrong, he began to escape. Judging from the current situation, it was almost impossible for him to get the heavenly book. He managed to avoid Zichen, but he could not avoid the others. Mighty Body appeared in front of Zheng Qing at the right time. He directly attacked and killed Zheng Qing. Hey BA and the others were not strong. They only relied on their spiritual senses, but they had killed 2 spiritual bodies. This was a record that they could be proud of. So far, the 7 native forces were all dead. None of the mutated beasts they had brought with them were alive. On the battlefield, there were only a few trial takers left. After Mighty Body killed Zheng Qing, he grinned at Zichen and said, "I'll kill him for you." Zichen stepped back and looked ahead cautiously. At the same time, he released his spiritual senses to sense the surroundings. The people of Overlord Physique and Sword Sect were in front of them. As for the killer who killed 2 clans' spiritual body, He had disappeared and was hiding in the dark. The wounds on Zichen's body that had been torn apart by the sword flash were slowly healing. It had to be said that the perfect body's defense was strong, and its recovery was even stronger. Tyrant Body and the people from Sword Sect didn't attack immediately. Tyrant Body looked at Zichen mockingly and said, "There's one more here. I don't mind giving you some time to deal with him." The Tyrant Body was obviously referring to the Jin family's spiritual body. At that moment, the Jin family's spiritual body was restrained by the perfect body and couldn't even escape. If it were any other spirit body, the other party would have fled long ago. However, the perfect body's attacks were close combat. Once it was entangled, it would launch a combo attack that couldn't be shaken off. Zichen took a deep look at the two people in front of him. Without any hesitation, he rushed towards the Jin family's spiritual body. Zichen naturally knew what the two were planning. It was nothing more than making the Jin family's spiritual body feel despair. Then, it would be ruthless and risk its life. In a desperate state, it would often be able to stimulate all its combat strength. Perhaps it could make Zichen suffer a huge loss. When the three of them attacked, it would be relatively easy to kill Zichen. Imagination was excellent, but reality was always different from imagination. Zichen flashed forward and fought 2 against 1, forcing the Jin family's spiritual body to retreat. One had a melee combo attack, while the other had extreme speed. The Jin family's spiritual body had no hope of escaping. The next moment, he indeed went crazy. The technique he used was abnormally sharp. The world lost its color in the next moment. Boundless golden light filled the entire sky. This was the power of metal. It was extremely terrifying as it carried the Jin family's spiritual body's life force attack. Zichen's body also shimmered with light. He pushed his perfect body to its limits. As his lifeblood boiled, the sound of surging waves could be heard. He waved his fist and pointed, striking out a perfect punch and lightning finger to meet the Jin family's spiritual body's powerful attack. Boom! Amidst the loud explosion, energy exploded and the two of them were sent retreating. However, just as the Jin family's spiritual body retreated, the perfect body stepped forward and launched another series of attacks. The Jin family's spiritual body's expression was ferocious as he wanted to self-destruct. Unfortunately, under the perfect combo, he didn't have the time to activate his core essence to self-destruct. As the Jin family's spiritual body retreated, Zichen also retreated. He retreated step by step, and with every step, the void would tremble. Following that, spatial ripples spread from beneath his feet. At that moment, Zichen's retreat was completely involuntary. As he retreated, he was still neutralizing the impact from before. It could be said that he was already in a state of weightlessness. Under such circumstances, it was very difficult for a person to protect themselves. It was even harder to attack. As an assassin, if he missed such an opportunity, he would definitely be struck by lightning. Furthermore, he didn't deserve to be called an assassin who was known to be able to kill with one strike. The void behind Zichen silently tore open as a pitch-black sword beam stabbed at Zichen's back. When the sword beam arrived in front of Zichen, the monstrous killing intent began to surge. This strike was very ingenious and professional. He didn't attack the back of the head, but the back of the heart. This was because if it was the back of the head, Zichen would definitely be able to sense it in advance. Perhaps he would instantly dodge and avoid the fatal strike. However, if it was the back of the heart, the perception would be weaker. Although it was only a little, it was enough for the assassin to seize the opportunity to kill Zichen. Thut! The sharp blade directly pierced through the assassin's back. The attack was successful and effective. The pitch-black sharp blade pierced through Zichen's back and into his chest. It pierced through his body and came out of his chest, causing a chill to run through his heart. This was a sign of a fatal strike. In the next moment, as long as the energy in the assassin's blade surged, it would shake off Zichen's body and kill Zichen. He would also take the opportunity to take away the 3 pages of the heavenly book that fell from Zichen's body. Then, he would immediately hide and escape. The assassin's plan was naturally brilliant. However, before he could sneer, the energy on the blade tore apart Zichen's body. He felt a dangerous aura approaching. Strangely, he found that the dangerous aura actually came from Zichen, who was in front of him. Zichen was about to die. How could he bring danger to the assassin? The thought flashed through his mind in a very short time. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't be able to make a strike. However, if it was a strike in advance, it would be a different story. Just as the blade pierced through Zichen's chest, Zichen didn't dodge. It was as if he could predict the future. Instead, he let a ray of golden light pass through his right shoulder. It directly pierced through his shoulder and then went straight to the assassin's head. The attack actually pierced through his shoulder. This was completely out of the assassin's expectations. The golden light that pierced through Zichen's shoulder was like a venomous snake. It made the assassin feel a strong threat of death. His face instantly changed. In the face of death, the assassin couldn't help but panic. At this moment, he had two choices. One was to use the terrifying energy of the blade to immediately kill Zichen. However, if he did that, the golden light would also fall on him. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, he would suffer unimaginable injuries. Under such circumstances, he would only end up being hacked to death by his allies. The second choice was to give up on attacking Zichen and dodge Zichen's attack. However, his previous attack and Zichen's self-harm would definitely cause Zichen serious injuries. This wasn't a difficult choice. Almost everyone could make this choice as quickly as possible. Although assassins were cold, ruthless, and bloodthirsty, they were still human. They might be cruel to others, but that didn't mean they wouldn't be cruel to themselves. They didn't blink when they killed, but that didn't mean they wouldn't blink when they were killed. Moreover, if they died, others would benefit from it. The assassin didn't hesitate and immediately made his choice. He wanted to pull out the blade and dodge Zichen's attack that would cause both sides to suffer. It was a beautiful thought, but the reality was that when he tried to pull out the blade, he found that it was as if the blade had grown out of Zichen's body. He couldn't pull it out. He subconsciously paused again, but the blade was still firmly stuck in Zichen's chest. It didn't move an inch. In the time it took for him to make his choice and pause, the golden light that had already shot out was enough to reach the assassin. The golden light was slanted upwards, so it pierced through the assassin's face. Then, it pierced through the assassin's face and rushed out from the top of his head. This attack was supposed to enter the assassin's mouth and come out from the back of his head, but the assassin dodged it. However, this degree of dodging was useless. No matter if it pierced the face or the mouth, the final result was the same. It pierced through the head. The golden light was the dragon soul spear. It connected Zichen and the assassin together. On the blade in front of Zichen's chest, golden blood gushed out like flowing water. This blood came from Zichen's hand. It was precisely because he was holding on to half of the blade that the assassin couldn't pull out the blade and successfully leave. Time seemed to have frozen. The two of them stood still in the air. Zichen had 2 wounds on his body that completely penetrated his body. Golden blood flowed out from the wounds. There was one on the assassin's body that penetrated through his head. The assassin's eyes were already wide open, almost protruding out. Zichen's eyes were calm, but there was a touch of madness and fear in his eyes. With his head pierced, the assassin naturally couldn't be alive. The assassin was dead, but Zichen was still alive. This scene caused Genshin's and Overlord Body's expressions to change drastically. The development of the situation was truly unexpected. However, after the two of them recovered from their shock, they charged at Zichen. Although Zichen wasn't dead, his injuries were definitely very serious. This was an opportunity. As for the crazy Jin family spirit body, it happened to be restraining the perfect body. 2 against 1, and against the injured Zichen, the two of them were extremely confident. Peng. However, at this moment, an explosion was heard. It was the Jin clan's spiritual body that was flashing with the light of perfect power, and then it directly exploded. Under the repeated attacks of the perfect body, the Jin family spirit body finally couldn't withstand it and was blasted apart. After destroying the Jin family spirit body, the perfect body's face turned somewhat pale. With a flash of light, a strength fruit appeared in his hand and he swallowed it without any hesitation. During this period, The assassin behind Zi Chen's body also exploded. After that, Zi Chen jolted out the sharp blade that had stabbed into his chest. At the same time, he pulled out the dragon soul spear that had stabbed into his body. When he pulled out the dragon soul spear, his expression didn't change, just like when he had stabbed it into his body. Chapter 925. The battle situation changed in an instant without any warning. There were no rules to follow. Zi Chen used extreme speed to dodge the two strikes before retreating. After retreating to a certain extent, his minor injuries recovered. At this moment, the perfect body's recovery speed was displayed vividly. The scene became a 2-on-2. Zi Chen and the perfect body's expressions were extremely calm, but the expressions of Sword Sect's Sword Heart and Overlord Body were extremely gloomy. At that moment, the duo's expressions were gloomy. They felt a deep sense of fear towards Zi Chen. Clearly, the killer's death wasn't a coincidence. Despite knowing that the killer was hiding in the dark, Zi Chen still clashed with the injured Jin family spirit body. After the collision, Zi Chen lost his center of gravity and retreated. Then, the killer seized the opportunity to unleash a surekill strike. All of this looked extremely normal, but on careful thought, there were many loopholes. When the killer struck, the Dragon Soul Spear in Zi Chen's hand also moved. However, it was an instant later than the killer. The two of them guessed that Zi Chen had deliberately been late. He had long sensed the killer's location and deliberately lured him in. After the killer attacked, Zi Chen had already thought of his thoughts and choices. The situation in front of him was extremely disadvantageous for Zi Chen. If he wanted to quickly turn the situation around, he had to kill one person first. Zi Chen chose the fastest and most effective way to trade his life for his life. Of course, this was also a gamble. If the killer was ruthless and traded his life for Zi Chen's, then Zi Chen would definitely die. However, the truth was that the killer wouldn't sacrifice his life for two outsiders. He wouldn't sacrifice his own interests to help them. 2-on-2. Which one do you choose? Zi Chen asked as he looked coldly at the two people in front of him. I'm a perfect body. I'm from the body cultivation lineage. It's better to fight the overlord body, the perfect body said. Alright, I'll fight the one with the heart of the sword. The two of them quickly found their target. Sword Heart sneered when he heard that. Even if it's a one-on-one, you have the confidence to kill me. Zi Chen shook his head and said, no, but you will definitely die. Genshin laughed heartily. What a good certain death. Your will is strong enough. If you join my sword sect, you will definitely be able to cultivate a sword heart. Zi Chen looked at Kenshin and said coldly, your Kenshin disgusts me. Since they were not on the same page, a fierce battle ensued. For the heavenly tomes, no one would back down. Hence, this battle was destined to be a battle of life and death. The perfect body collided with the overlord body, triggering a tremendous force that caused space to constantly distort. Explosions sounded like thunder in the sky as the two of them fought in midair. As they fought, they retreated into the distance to fight to the death. With a clanging sound, the long sword on Genshin's back was unsheathed. The long sword was exceptionally sharp and emitted a cold light. The tip of the sword was pointed directly at Zi Chen. Zi Chen held the Dragon Soul Spear tightly in his hands. The originally silver body of the spear was now emitting a golden light. However, within this golden light, there was also a silver light flashing. This silver light was not the light of the Dragon Soul Spear, but the power of the extreme Yin Thunder Yuan. As the sword sect's Genshin, I'm at the human origin realm and can mobilize the sword intent of heaven and earth. If I can't even kill a mere origin core realm cultivator like you, I'm really not worthy of being the future leader of the sword sect. Genshin said coldly. As his voice fell, the sword in his hand seemed to sense Genshin's emotions and shone even more brightly. A crisp sword hum sounded from the sword. This sword actually had a spirit. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth also surged crazily at this moment. Vaguely, Zi Chen seemed to hear a sword hum coming from all directions. There were swords everywhere. The swirling spiritual energy of heaven and earth caused Zi Chen's black robe to flutter. The cold sword intent scraped Zi Chen's cheeks painfully. Zi Chen's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. Genshin was like a spirit body, extremely difficult to kill. Although Zichen had successfully killed 2 of them, there was more calculation involved than actual strength. At this moment, he was facing Genshin head-on, relying on strength and combat power. Calculation was useless. The pressure on Zichen grew. It seemed that at this moment, swords appeared from all directions and were all aimed at him. In the next moment, 10,000 swords would pierce through his heart. Zichen held the Dragon Soul Spear tighter in his hand. His pupils shrank slightly, and the aura around him gradually rose. Perfect Yuan energy began to surge. Zichen resisted Genshin's pressure. His eyes were unyielding, unwilling, and filled with killing intent. At this moment, the Dragon Soul Spear in Zichen's hand seemed to sense Zichen's emotional fluctuations. A loud dragon hum sounded from it. After the dragon hum sounded, the Dragon Soul Spear in Zichen's hand glowed with a silver light. The golden light could not suppress the silver light. The Dragon Soul Spear's silver light was dazzling, and an extremely terrifying aura surged on it. This aura faced off against Genshin's sword. The Dragon Soul Spear in Zichen's hand also had a spirit and soul. Looking at the spear in Zichen's hand, a hint of surprise flashed across Genshin's eyes. However, this change in his expression disappeared in a flash. In the next moment, he raised his sword high. On the sword, light surged. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth frantically surged and gathered towards the sword. The sword was like a general. With a command, it was summoning its subordinates. It was also like a huge whirlpool that was swallowing the spiritual energy. In the blink of an eye, the aura surging on the sword reached a peak. Then, Genshin swung his sword down. With this slash, a sword hum resounded through the sky. With this slash, heaven and earth lost their color, and the wind and clouds moved. This slash carried with it the absolute sword will of the sword sect. The violent aura caused Zichen's expression to change. When the sword light fell, it reflected Zichen's pale face. However, in the face of this terrifying attack, his fighting spirit was still high. He activated the perfect origin energy in abdomen and poured it into the Dragon Soul Spear. Then, from the inside of the Dragon Soul Spear, a terrifying aura emerged. Sky-breaking spear art. Amidst the explosive roar, the dazzling spear light streaked across the sky. With a loud dragon hum, it was like a silver divine dragon that went straight for the sword light. The sword light and the dragon-shaped spear light collided in the air. The sound was like thousands of thunderbolts exploding at the same time. Just as the two energies collided, Zichen and Genshin also rushed towards each other with the weapons in their hands that contained souls. Both of their eyes were surging with killing intent. Clang! A sonorous sound rang out. The two weapons collided, and sparks flew everywhere. Clang! Another blow. The terrifying energy surged, and the distorted space showed signs of being torn apart. Clang! Clang! More blows were exchanged. The energy around the two of them had turned into a storm. At this moment, the two of them were in the eye of the storm. The storm around them was formed because of the two of them. During this exchange, blood gradually flowed from the corner of Zichen's mouth, and the expression on his face gradually became crazed. Genshin, on the other hand, had a sneer on his face, and his attacks became fiercer. Boom! Finally, after countless exchanges, there was an explosion at the place where the two of them were fiercely fighting. The destructive storm had reached its limit and was truly destroyed. A figure flew out of the destructive storm in a sorry state. As he flew out, golden blood spurted from his mouth. After that, another figure floated out. It was Genshin of the Sword Sect. Genshin thought that his posture when he appeared was very elegant. Little did he know that there were many small holes on his robe, and many of them were stained with blood. 3 inches away from his heart, there was an even larger bloody hole, and fresh blood was flowing out. Genshin ignored his own injuries and swept his eyes over Zichen in the distance. He said coldly, "The gap between our realms cannot be made up. Today, you must die." Zichen slowly stood up. His eyes were as bright as Xingchen's. There were more sword wounds on his body, and he looked even more miserable than Genshin. He looked at Genshin, pausing between each word, and said in an extremely serious tone, The dead is you. After saying this, Zichen swallowed several drops of high-grade liquefied yuan to recover his energy. Genshin, however, laughed and said disdainfully, "It's useless to be so eloquent." As he laughed, the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth once again gathered towards Genshin. Genshin's consumption was quickly recovered, even faster than Zichen. As soon as he recovered, Genshin rushed towards Zichen. The sword hummed again, and Zichen blocked with his spear. The dragon's roar also resounded in the sky. This was destined to be a fierce battle. It was also the most difficult life and death battle Zichen had faced since his debut. It was even more difficult than when he fought Huoyang. After all, Huoyang was at the same realm as Zichen, but Genshin was now one realm higher than Zichen. This was a huge realm, and there was an insurmountable gap. The only thing Zichen could rely on was his perfect elemental energy and perfect strength, as well as his half-baked perfect spiritual sense. As for other aspects, such as battle techniques and comprehension of techniques, Zichen was inferior to Genshin, and not just by a little bit. The two fought fiercely, using powerful techniques to attack, but Zichen was defeated time and time again. He coughed up blood and was sent flying. Zichen was perfectly suppressed. Genshin's face was filled with pride, and his confidence in winning grew. His attacks were stronger, and his sword will was more frightening. Puff, puff, sword light flashed, and two bloody holes appeared on Zichen's body. During this time, Zichen's attack had not been launched. This huge difference made Zichen's expression change, but Genshin laughed proudly. "Haha, Zichen, I have to thank you. You actually allowed my swordsmanship to improve." Zichen was relieved. So he had broken through. No wonder his speed was so fast. "In order to thank you, I want to repay you." As soon as Genshin finished speaking, he displayed a set of sword techniques. Zichen only felt a pain in his chest. When he looked down, he saw that the clothes on his chest had been cut to pieces, and there was a bloody thank you character on his chest. Genshin laughed proudly. "How is it? My thank you character is not bad, right?" Zichen nodded. "It is not bad." After that, Zichen made his move. He displayed all kinds of techniques, but he lacked comprehension and time. Zichen's attacks could no longer keep up with Genshin's. The wounds on his body increased, and his injuries became more and more serious. Techniques were completely useless. Once Zichen used a technique, it would only make him die faster. Thus, Zichen decided to give up on techniques. Puff, puff. Two more bloody holes appeared on his body, but he did not dodge or use any techniques. He did not even frown as he sent a spear towards Genshin's chest. Genshin used his long sword to block. Sparks flew, and Genshin's robe was cut open, leaving a shallow wound on his skin. Genshin's eyes flashed with surprise after being injured by Zichen, but it quickly turned cold. After blocking Zichen's attack, he did not wait for the sword to retract and attacked again. Two more bloody holes appeared on Zichen's body, but Zichen did not dodge. He stabbed his spear towards Genshin's chest again. Chapter 926. Zichen gave up all his techniques and attacks. His attacks became direct and simple. He held the spear, circulated the two types of essence energy, and stabbed straight. This was an attack without any pattern. Anyone could do it. The sword beam came again, but Zichen didn't dodge. He even faced it head-on. It was as though he was committing suicide. Unfortunately, the dragon soul spear that followed Zichen forward was also stabbing straight at him. Kenshin's eyes flashed. He, who should have left two bloody holes in Zichen's body, could only stab one before withdrawing his sword to block. Amidst the clanging sound, he blocked Zichen's attack. Sparks erupted when the spear collided with the sword beam, but due to his slow retreat, another wound appeared on his body. Although this wound was more than 10 times lighter than Zichen's and was extremely insignificant, for some reason, Kenshin's heart suddenly palpitated. Intense energy fluctuations came from afar. This was the collision of the overlord body and the perfect body. It was likely that the battle between the two of them was extremely intense. On Zichen's side, the battle situation was slowly changing. Chen had gone from being passive to taking the initiative at some point in time. The bloody holes that Kenshin struck Chen's body were decreasing, but the wounds on his body were increasing. Chen flashed and charged straight at Kenshin, thrusting the spear in his hand again. Kenshin began to dodge, but his speed wasn't as fast as Chen's. He could only choose to be hit or block. He used his sword to block Chen's attack, but soon, Chen's attack came again. Seeing that Chen didn't defend and only attacked blindly, exchanging life for life, Kenshin suddenly lost his confidence. His original arrogant expression had long disappeared, replaced by solemnity and seriousness. Kenshin was forced to retreat as he cursed Chen inwardly for being a lunatic. He wanted to seize the opportunity to kill the defenseless Chen in one strike, but he was always short of an opportunity. Every time there was a chance to kill Chen, the spear in Chen's hand would take his life. Kenshin didn't dare risk his life and kept retreating. The wounds on his body increased, and by the time he realized that something was amiss, his injuries were already extremely serious. Run. The powerful Genshin's will was completely destroyed by Chen's fighting style. He no longer had the will to fight and decided to run away. However, he didn't even have the will to destroy the enemy. Genshin had clearly lost this battle. Chen's injuries were much more serious than Genshin's, but the killing intent surging around him was 10 times stronger than Genshin's. You won't be able to leave. As his cold words fell, Chen's body flashed with brilliance, and he split into 3. The 2 doppelgangers formed seals at the same time, displaying extreme yin and extreme yang. A golden sun and a crescent moon appeared and went straight for Genshin. When Genshin blocked these 2 attacks, his speed inevitably decreased greatly. At this moment, Chen stepped forward with his spear and stabbed at him. Pu. Kenshin's body now had a bloody hole. Although the yin-yang energy didn't explode, if Chen could open a bloody hole, he could open a few more. The doppelgangers disappeared, reappeared, and disappeared again. In this cycle, more and more bloody holes appeared on Genshin's body. In the end, the number of bloody holes on Genshin's body finally exceeded Chen's. However, he could only compare to a spirit body, not a perfect body. Therefore, his injuries were much more serious than Chen's. There was no longer any suspense in killing Genshin. In his heavily injured state, he chose to fight Chen with his life on the line. He was purely courting death. The sharp strike nearly sliced apart half of Chen's body. At the same time, a huge hole appeared in Chen's chest. This injury was very serious, so serious that even a perfect body couldn't recover. However, in exchange, Genshin died. This was the result of Genshin risking his life. The spear in Chen's hand finally stabbed into Genshin's glabella, destroying Genshin's heavily injured soul. Chen had finally relied on his own strength to kill an existence comparable to a spirit body one-on-one. With Genshin dead, Chen was almost at the end of his rope. He descended from the sky, and the light around him had already become extremely dim. At that moment, the world trembled as powerful auras appeared from the horizon. Sensing the auras, Chen looked towards the horizon and saw figures approaching from afar. These figures were abnormally tall, comparable to a bear. They were the body cultivators who should have left earlier. They were heading straight for him, their intentions unknown. Now, Chen's condition was extremely bad. Even a treasure pill couldn't quickly recover from his injuries. The sudden appearance of these body cultivators made Chen's expression turn extremely ugly. At that moment, a powerful aura emerged from another direction. This was an aura that Chen was familiar with. It came from the demon ape. The demon ape held the black rod and arrived in time. It stood in front of Chen and blocked the body cultivators in front of him. There were a total of 6 people, and their combat strength was comparable to a human origin Carnate Realm warrior. The other party didn't charge straight over. Instead, they stopped 1,000 meters away and looked at the demon ape from afar. During this period of time, there were constant tremors coming from afar. The outcome of the battle between the perfect body and the overlord body had yet to be decided, but these body cultivators had no intention of helping. It's all settled. Chen's weak voice sounded. It's all settled. Your injuries are very serious. Hurry up and recover, the demon ape said without turning its head. The body cultivators didn't attack, nor did the demon ape. In the distance, the tremors lasted for a moment before coming to an end. The outcome of the battle between the overlord body and the perfect body had already been decided. The body cultivators in front remained indifferent, as though they didn't care about the outcome. However, their attitude also indicated that the victor was definitely the perfect body. Moments later, a figure appeared on the horizon. It was none other than the body cultivator with the perfect body. The other party flew over, and when he saw Zichen, a strange glint flashed in his eyes. Then, he strode towards Zichen. The demon ape stood in front of Zichen and held the black rod as it said to the perfect body in front of it, "If you take another step forward, don't blame me for being impolite." The perfect body answered the demon ape with his actions. He didn't stop as he walked towards Zichen step by step. "You must have a death wish." The demon ape roared as he brandished his rod and was about to strike. "Wait." Zichen's weak voice stopped the demon ape. The demon ape looked at Zichen as Zichen looked at the perfect body. A faint smile appeared on the corner of the perfect body's mouth as he looked down at Zichen and said, "Can you still fight?" Zichen's voice was weak, but it was extremely firm as he replied, "It's enough to kill you." "Ha ha." The perfect body laughed out loud for a long time before stopping. He said, "All right, only the two of us are left. Let's see who has the last laugh." Zichen stood up with an extremely determined look in his eyes. "Come on." The dim light around Zichen suddenly became blinding. He didn't use the dragon soul spear. Instead, he clenched his fist and charged at the perfect body. The corners of the perfect body's mouth curled into a smile as he similarly clenched his fist and punched Zichen. Fut fut. Zichen punched the perfect body's chest as the latter similarly punched Zichen's chest. The two of them didn't dodge and continued attacking before vomiting blood. However, the blood Zichen spat out was golden, while the blood of the perfect body was blood red. A powerful force surged out from their fists. This force almost shattered each other's bodies. As the force surged, the two of them retreated. However, just as they retreated, they stepped forward again. It was still an attack without any defense, a pure physical collision. After the two of them clashed, they were sent flying again. However, this time, Zichen flew dozens of meters back, while the perfect body only took a few steps back. "Your injuries are too serious. I'm afraid you won't be able to make it," the perfect body said coldly. Zichen looked coldly at the perfect body and said, "You will definitely be the one to die." With that said, Zichen charged at the perfect body again. Blood splattered as Zichen was sent flying again. His injuries became more and more serious, to the point where his life was in danger. However, at that moment, the perfect body transformed into a beam of light and charged at Zichen. The other party quickly approached Zichen and launched a series of attacks at Zichen's body. Amidst the loud bangs, Zichen's body was like a sandbag. His body was bleeding from many places, and his entire body was in tatters as though it could explode at any moment. Monstrous killing intent surged around the demonic ape as it charged at the perfect body with the black rod in hand. However, before the demonic ape could reach the perfect body, a few body cultivators stood in front of it. "Those who stop me will die." The demonic ape roared as it instantly used world-devouring demon in a bid to kill the body cultivators. At that moment, the perfect body finished its combo. Zichen's body landed on the ground as the perfect body looked down at Zichen and said, "This should do, right?" After landing, Zichen's body didn't explode. Instead, it emitted rays of light. One had to know that the light on Zichen's body had been completely dispersed when he faced the perfect body's combo. However, at that moment, Zichen's body glowed again. This light was emitted from his blood, bones, bone marrow, meridians, and organs. It spread from the inside out to the surface of his body. After the light faded, Zichen's body burned with flames again. In the beginning, the flame was only a small flame, but it quickly rose into a huge fire. Then, the fire engulfed Zichen. And amidst the flames, there was a palpitating aura. This was the aura of the fire of life. After Zi Chen's perfect body was nearly blown up by the spirit body, this was the second time he was heavily injured and reborn. In the sky, the perfect body stared at Zi Chen below as a strange glint flashed in its eyes. Indeed, it's the purest perfect body. This self-healing ability is truly enviable. Every time you are reborn from the flames, it's a metamorphosis and enhancement of the perfect body. Upon seeing Zi Chen's situation, the tyrannical demonic ape's face instantly lit up with ecstasy. It no longer smashed down with the black rod in its hand. The demonic aura that filled the sky dissipated as it quickly rushed to the fire of life and shouted at the perfect body above, "If you know what's good for you, leave now and you can still preserve your life. If you don't, only death awaits you." The perfect body looked at the demonic ape and asked with a smile, "Leave? Why should I leave?" "If you don't leave, you'll die," said the demonic ape coldly. The perfect body smiled and said, "I haven't obtained what I want. I won't leave." The demonic ape glared. "How dare you snatch something?" The perfect body shook its head. "It's not snatching. It's taking. Or rather, giving. This is because I need to take something from Zi Chen, or Zi Chen will give me something. Dream on." Just as the demonic ape finished speaking, Zi Chen's voice sounded from the flames. "What do you want me to give you?" "The perfect body's technique," said the perfect body. "You want the heavenly book." "Dream on," repeated the demonic ape. Chapter 927. On Zi Chen's body, the flames of vitality were still burning. When he stood up, he looked like a flaming man of the five-element spirit body. His flashing eyes landed on the perfect body as he asked, "Perfect body technique?" "That's right. I need this technique." Zi Chen seemed extremely dissatisfied with this answer. The perfect body paused before saying, "We body cultivators need this cultivation technique. Body cultivators cultivate perfect body cultivation techniques. Don't you have one?" The transformation of Zi Chen's physique was about to come to an end. The flames around him were slowly converging. He looked at the perfect body and asked in puzzlement, "You have a perfect body, the purest perfect body. Why do you need a cultivation technique from me?" When the perfect body heard that, he said with a bitter smile, "It's true that the body cultivator lineage mainly cultivates the body, but not everyone cultivates a perfect body. You can tell from their bodies that the cultivation techniques they cultivate are deviated. As for me, I was just lucky. I was born with a perfect physique, not because of the cultivation technique." Looking at the perfect body, Zi Chen sucked in a breath of cold air. His mind trembled. He was born with a perfect body. How powerful was this talent? Seeing Zi Chen remain silent, the perfect body said, "Don't worry. I came here under the instructions of the body cultivator lineage. I won't make things difficult for you. To be honest, when I came, I did have the thought and impulse to kill you and replace you. However, in the following battle, I realized that you are indeed extraordinary. To have such means at the late-stage primal core realm, you are definitely not an ordinary person. Furthermore, if we really fight head-on, my perfect body might not be able to defeat you due to the lack of a cultivation technique." "Instructed? You said you were instructed." Zi Chen stared at the perfect body. The perfect body smiled and said, "Of course. Otherwise, why would I come here for no reason? And I'm here mainly to do 3 things." "Which 3? Zi Chen asked. The demonic ape also looked at the perfect body. The perfect body looked at Zi Chen and said, "The first is to help you obtain the soul cultivation technique." "Help me? How did you know I was here?" Zi Chen asked again. "Besides, we're not related. I don't even know your name." "Oh, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. You can call me Perfect Body." Perfect Body introduced himself. "Perfect Body. You call that a name?" Before Zi Chen could ask, the demonic ape glared at him. "Of course. Before the heavenly book appeared, I was the only perfect body in the entire Tianwu continent. Why can't I have this name?" The perfect body said proudly. "You're too narcissistic." The devil ape curled its lips. To be able to blast apart an overlord body in a head-on clash, even if it's narcissistic, I have the right to do so. The perfect body was even more arrogant. Zi Chen coughed lightly and said, Alright, let's get down to business. How did you know I was here? Why did you help me? The perfect body paused and said, that's a long story. I need to start from the beginning. However, look at me bleeding all over. Shouldn't you let me recover? Zichen's face suddenly became awkward. He nodded, and even politely handed over a precious pill. As for the demonic ape beside him, it curled its lips. It had just been bragging, but now it couldn't. To his surprise, the perfect body didn't accept Zichen's good intentions. Instead, there was a hint of disdain in its eyes, as though it was saying that who still used precious pills? It was already outdated. After rejecting Zichen's good intentions, the perfect body smiled and said, although I don't have a pure cultivation technique and the perfect body can't be reborn from the ashes, as a perfect body, I still have some privileges that are known as the strongest physique of humans. Zichen looked at the perfect body curiously and asked, privileges? What privileges? The same privileges as spirit bodies. With that said, the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual energy surged. The perfect body emitted golden light and began to devour the violent energy. The injuries on his body rapidly improved after the energy entered his body. His dispirited expression also became spirited, as though he had consumed a precious pill. I don't need pills to recover from my injuries and expenditure. This is a privilege that only spirit bodies have. After I reached the human essence realm, I also had this privilege. After about 30 seconds, the perfect body's injuries were completely healed. He had a smug look on his face. Zichen found a huge rock not far away and sat down. As for the demonic ape, it went to clean up the battlefield. It didn't seem like the monk was around, so such technical work was left to the demonic ape. Why are you sitting down? After recovering from his injuries, the perfect body changed into a set of golden clothes. He looked extremely handsome. He was born with a perfect body, so his looks were naturally perfect. If the two of them were to compare appearances, the perfect body would crush Zichen. Zichen looked at the perfect body and said curiously, didn't you say that it's a long story from the beginning? I'll sit down and listen to you slowly. The perfect body was enlightened and said, so that's why. I almost forgot. He also walked to the side of the boulder and sat down. With a flash of light in his hand, he took out 2 bottles of wine and handed one to Zichen. He said, actually, you should be able to guess that you should have been banished, but you are still on the ancient path. Of course, someone deliberately did this. Therefore, whoever sent you here was the one who asked me to come. Zichen opened the bottle and took a sip. A strange glint flashed across his face. This was because this wine was actually a high-quality wine that could only be found on the ancient path. It was very useful for body tempering. Zichen said, you're talking about the ancient race. The perfect body took a big gulp and smacked his lips. There were still wine stains at the corner of his mouth. He spread out his hands and said, of course, who else could it be other than them? They asked me to help you obtain the soul cultivation technique, but they aren't sure if there's a soul cultivation technique. I came here purely to try my luck. However, when I came, my body cultivator lineage instructed me to do the second thing. That is to get the perfect body cultivation technique back from you. Zichen put down the wine bottle and looked at the perfect body. What about the third thing? When the third thing was mentioned, the perfect body's expression clearly turned much colder. Furthermore, there was a hint of killing intent in his eyes. The third thing has been done. It's done. Zichen had a puzzled look. That's right. The third thing was to kill the spirit bodies of the 5 Elements faction. Now, all 5 of them are dead. With that said, the perfect body sneered. Hee, I believe the 5 Elements family clan will definitely cry when they learn of the loss of 5 spirit bodies. The 5 Elements family clan has always relied on their spirit bodies and thought that they were invincible once they appeared. However, here, their 5 Elements family clan died the fastest. The most worthless thing was that they were killed by a few trash native factions. There was obvious schadenfreude in the perfect body's words. In this world, the deaths of the 5 Elements family clan members were indeed very unjust and aggrieved. If they weren't killed by a trap and faced head-on, Zichen would be like facing Genshin. It would be very strenuous. Your body cultivator lineage has a grudge with the Five Elements family clan, Zichen asked again. The perfect body glanced at Zichen and said seriously, "What do you mean by our body cultivator lineage? As a perfect body, you are also a member of the body cultivator lineage. As for the grudge you mentioned, there is naturally one, but it's not to the point of destroying the other party's spirit bodies at all costs. This attack on the spirit bodies is purely to warn the gradually expanding Five Elements family clan that spirit bodies aren't invincible. In the Tianwu continent, there are plenty of people who can kill spirit bodies. Once the demons are released, the spirit bodies won't have the advantage." Zichen naturally knew about the collusion between the Five Elements family clan and the aliens. It could be said that he had single-handedly ruined the other party's plan. He said, "Isn't the plan ruined? Could it be that the Five Elements family clan still refuses to give up? Of course, they are blinded by greed and are determined to go all out. However, with 5 spirit bodies dead this time, I believe they will consider this matter carefully." After that, the perfect body said coldly, "Those who collude with aliens must die. The aliens seem to have a huge grudge with you." The demonic ape, who had just finished collecting the resources, heard the perfect body's words. The perfect body looked at the demonic ape and said seriously, "Of course, aliens are the enemies of humans. Kill them when you see them." Then, he smiled and threw a bottle of wine to the demonic ape. "Of course, except for you, an alien." The demonic ape snorted and took the bottle of wine. It opened the lid and drank like a cow. At that moment, the 6 body cultivators walked over and greeted Zichen with cupped fists. Then, they stood behind the perfect body. After that, the few of them chatted casually. Finally, they talked about the perfect body cultivation technique. Zichen frowned slightly and said, "Do you want a cultivation technique or a heavenly book?" The perfect body was amused when he heard that. "You can give me a cultivation technique. I don't mind if you give me a heavenly book." Zichen naturally couldn't give him a heavenly book. If the perfect body insisted on a heavenly book, the two of them would inevitably fight. Zichen imparted the perfect body cultivation technique to the other party. He didn't hold back at all. The only thing missing was that he didn't give him a heavenly book. However, without a heavenly book, even if he cultivated a perfect body, he wouldn't be able to become the purest perfect body. With the cultivation technique in hand, the mission was completed perfectly. The perfect body was about to leave. "Where are you going?" Zichen asked. The perfect body smiled and said, "Of course I'm going to the ancient road for a trial. Do you really think this ancient road is owned by my family? You can come and go as you please. Before the trial ends, no one is allowed to leave." "Oh, right, I forgot. Except for you. You will be expelled for killing a spirit body." Zichen's face immediately darkened. "I hate people who speak the truth." The perfect body laughed and said, "If there's a chance, let's meet in the outside world. Don't die. Even if you die, you have to hide the heavenly book or arrange for some trials. Give the heavenly book as a reward before dying." Zichen's face darkened even more as he said angrily, "Scram." The perfect body's figure vanished, but its words echoed in the world. "Before I leave, there's something I didn't tell you. You can return to the ancient road by using the token given to you by the ancient race. I suggest you return to the ancient road first to avoid the limelight." After the perfect body left, the people from the body cultivator lineage also left. This time, the perfect body had helped Zichen greatly. Zichen had no complaints about giving him a perfect technique. The entire world became empty, leaving only the demonic ape and Zichen. At that moment, the demonic ape was counting its gains. The gains this time were undoubtedly huge. Zichen looked at the demonic ape and said, "Put away the things first. We'll count them when we have time. Let's leave now." Zichen and the demonic ape arrived at the exit of this world. The exit wasn't far from the original storm. After coming out, a token appeared in Zichen's hand. This was the token given to him by the ancient race elder. With this token, Zichen could teleport back to the ancient road. As perfect essence energy surged in, the token in Zichen's hand began to glow. Then, The light spread out and enveloped him and the demonic ape. The two of them instantly vanished. P.S. My cold has worsened again. This is the second time I've caught a cold this month. The last time, it took 7 or 8 days for me to recover. This time, it's been 4 days. I feel like I need an infusion today. I haven't had one because I heard that after one infusion, I'll have to infusion every time I catch a cold. Therefore, I've been taking medicine and resisting it. However, I don't have a perfect body. I can't take it anymore. I'll take medicine and sleep. If that doesn't work, I'll go for an infusion. The 10 chapters a day that I owe will be paid back before the end of the month. If I can't pay it back in a day, I'll choose to pay it back in a few days with an additional 8 chapters. Why is it 8 chapters and not 7 chapters? It's because it's in installments. There's interest. Chapter 928. The token brought Zi Chen to an unfamiliar place. It was a huge square that spanned dozens of miles. There were all kinds of things placed on the square. There were black rocks that were as big as mountains and emitted a dark light. The black rocks were square and had many scratches on them. They looked like they were left behind by swords and sabers. 2 miles away from the black rocks, there was a set of weapons. The weapons flashed with a cold light and looked extremely sharp. Other than the black rocks and weapons, there were other things in the square, such as a martial arts arena and stone pillars. Other than that, the two of them also saw many humans. Some of them were sitting cross-legged, some were practicing, and some were using weapons to hack at the black rocks. Zi Chen's appearance caused everyone to stop what they were doing. Their gazes all turned towards him. Seeing Zi Chen and the devil ape, everyone was curious. While the two of them were sizing up the crowd, everyone's eyes also looked over at Zi Chen. A shirtless man put down a millstone-sized rock and asked, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing here?" Zi Chen waved the token in his hand and said, "This brought me here. Is this the ancient road? The ancient clan token? You are Zi Chen." After seeing the token, everyone's eyes narrowed. Then, they all gasped. "You are Zi Chen, the one who killed the spirit body. Is it true? Did you really kill the spirit body?" Zi Chen. He is Zi Chen. He has the token that the clan elder gave me. It can't be wrong. Before Zi Chen could say anything, everyone started asking questions. Zi Chen didn't know how to answer. Everyone put down the things in their hands and walked over. They looked at Zi Chen curiously as if they were looking at a monster. "Are you really Zi Chen?" After everyone stepped forward, the shirtless man who had asked the question asked again. Zi Chen nodded and said, "I am." When the shirtless man heard this, he laughed out loud, "Haha, it's good that it's you. I heard that you killed a spirit body, and your combat power is extremely strong. Why don't we compete?" Zi Chen shook his head. "I'm not good at competing with others. I'm looking for someone. I'm looking for the person who gave me the token. If you're looking for the elder, we won't stop you. Just look for him." Before Zi Chen could thank him, the big man added, "But you have to fight me first." The burly man blocked Zi Chen's path with a provocative look on his face. "Sorry, I'm not used to competing with others." Zi Chen's voice turned cold. He's not used to competing. He's probably afraid of losing. Hehe, I think so too. He's afraid of losing to big brother Jiu Hu. What killing spirits? I think it's all just bragging. Now, you don't even dare to fight. At the side, the others all started to mock him. On the side, the demonic ape was furious. It said coldly, "I'll do it. I can beat this trash up with a single strike." Zi Chen stopped the demonic ape. It was his first time here, so he shouldn't cause trouble for no reason. Unexpectedly, when the shirtless man heard this, he was instantly enraged. He glared at the demonic ape and said, "Alien, who did you just call trash?" "Of course I'm talking about you. Don't tell me I'm talking about myself," the demonic ape said coldly. The black rod had already appeared in its hand. Zi Chen clearly felt a chill in the air. The way everyone looked at the demonic ape immediately changed. It became hostile, as if the two sides were mortal enemies. Zi Chen knew that this was because of the demonic ape's identity as a member of the alien race, and not the demonic ape himself. He stopped the demonic ape and looked at the shirtless man. I'm not used to fighting with fear. The shirtless man's gaze fell on Zichen again. He said loudly, then what are you used to? I, Jiyu Hu, will play with you. Zichen said coldly, I'm used to fighting to the death. Fighting to the death. When everyone heard this, their expressions immediately changed. The killing intent in their eyes dissipated immediately. Then, their gazes swept back and forth between Zichen and Jiyu Hu. Jiyu Hu's eyes were fixed on Zichen. He didn't agree, but he didn't reject either. Zichen also looked at him and said, if you don't agree, then please move aside. Don't block my way. I still need to find someone. Suddenly, sharp mocking laughter came from all around. Big brother Jiyu Hu, he's mocking you. That's right, big brother Jiyu Lu. If you don't agree, he'll think that you're afraid of him. A fight to the death is a fight to the death. If you don't die, how can you live? If you don't break, how can you stand? Jiyu Hu, promise him. Don't embarrass the ancient race. Promise him. Beat him up. Everyone pointed their spears at Jiyu Hu, thinking of ways to instigate, bewitch, and provoke him. Looking at the crowd again, there was no longer any killing intent on their faces. At this moment, they all looked like they were watching a good show. Everyone's emotions changed so quickly that Zichen's face immediately turned strange. As for the demon ape, who was ready to fight with the black rod, it also felt like its all-out attack had missed. Jiyu Hu's expression didn't change, but he didn't agree immediately. Although Jiyu Hu's gaze was firm, Zichen could still see a hint of fear in his eyes. Perhaps it was fear. And Zichen's spiritual sense, which was about to perfect, could clearly sense his aura fluctuation. He was at the peak of the inner core realm, but not at the mortal core realm. The current Zichen could even kill a mortal core realm spiritual body, let alone an ancient race inner core realm cultivator. Unless the other party was from the other three royal races. Senior brother Jiyu Hu, does senior sister Jiyu Yu know that you're such a coward? That's right, big brother Jiyu Hu. If elder sister Jiyu Yu knew that you were afraid of the battle today, and knew your cowardly appearance, the popularity and prestige you've accumulated before will be greatly reduced. Who knows, at that time, elder sister Jiyu Yu might throw herself into the arms of others. Hearing everyone's words, Zichen couldn't help but laugh in his heart. What kind of weirdo is this? In order to watch a battle, they can think of all kinds of instigation methods. Without guessing, it was obvious that this so-called Jiyu Yu was Jiyu Hu's dream lover, and the kind that didn't succeed. But with such instigation, didn't they know that this was a battle to the death? Didn't they know that a battle to the death meant that one would live, one would die, or two would die? Jiyu Hu didn't know whether it was because he was confident or because he had no way out, but he gritted his teeth and shouted, fine, a battle to the death it is. Awesome. Big brother Jiyu Hu is really awesome. Big brother Jiyu Hu, if you die today, senior sister Jiyu Yu will be so touched that she won't marry for the rest of her life. She will be proud of you. The others began to cheer, but they didn't know that Jiyu Hu wanted to cry at this moment. He was lonely and wanted to find someone to compare notes with, but why did it become a battle to the death? The crowd immediately stepped aside. Clearly, they were preparing to make space for the two of them to fight to the death. Suddenly, a voice came from the side. It was a skinny young man who first used Jiyu Yu to instigate Jiyu Hu. He walked forward and said, no, we can't fight here. Senior brother Jiyu Hu wants a battle to the death. It's such a heroic thing. We have to fight on the battle stage. The crowd followed suit. Anyway, since they were already here, Zichen was happy to play with them when he saw this group of interesting people. In any case, one of them would be beaten up. It just so happened that Zichen was tired of fighting and killing previously. He also wanted to have a taste of the feeling of beating people up. Moreover, it seemed that he had not used the #1 divine technique in the world for a long time. Amidst the cheering, Zichen and Jiyu Hu came to the battle stage and stood facing each other. Zichen had a faint smile on his face, and Jiyu Hu was also pretending to be relaxed. A young man who volunteered to be the referee jumped onto the battle stage and said that he would be the referee for the two. Zichen laughed. Did a battle to the death need a referee? Wait. Before the battle started, another voice came. Skinny monkey, what do you want now? Ji who looked at the skinny young man with a dark face. Shou who glanced at Ji who, then glanced at Zi Chen, then swept his gaze across the crowd. He coughed lightly and puffed out his chest. Today's battle is a life and death battle between senior brother Ji Hu and Zi Chen. You must know that Zi Chen has killed a spirit body expert before. This battle is bound to be a spectacular one, and it is bound to cause a commotion in our Ji family. If senior brother Ji Hu wins, then senior brother Ji Hu's reputation will definitely soar, and he will be able to win senior sister Ji Yu's heart. Loud cheers came from all around. On the stage, Ji Hu's face also showed some pride. However, Shou Hu changed the topic and said, but if senior brother Ji Hu loses and is unfortunately beaten to death, then he will be a witness to history. He personally witnessed the strength of Zi Chen and the strength of the spirit body. He risked his life and used his death to tell us that we can't fight against the spirit body. This noble spirit of sacrificing oneself for others is worthy of our respect and admiration. Applause came from all around. Waving his hand, the skinny monk-like man continued, so, regardless of whether senior brother Ji Hu lives or dies today, he has proven his great value. So, I'm going to call everyone here, especially Ji Mai, Ji Zun, and the others. I'm going to let him know how powerful our senior brother Ji Hu is. Ji Hu felt that what Skinny Monkey said was right at first, but the more he listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. Skinny Monkey's action was obviously embarrassing him. He could spar with Zi Chen, but if it was a battle to the death, then he would definitely lose and die. This prodigal thing really wanted to harm him. All around them, the others felt that this was reasonable. They started to make a ruckus and wanted to call for help. Ji Hu hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, stop." As expected, everyone stopped. Among them, Shou Hu said, "Senior brother Ji Hu, such a magnificent feat must be witnessed by someone. Not only will I call your love rival, but I will also call senior sister Ji Yu. She will also be a witness to your greatness. She will be moved and proud of you." Greatness, my ass. Ji Hu wanted to curse in his heart, but he suppressed the urge to curse. He deliberately put on a face of facing death and said in a deep voice, "Don't go. You have to keep a low profile." Hee hee. At such a sacred moment, everyone was touched. However, a loud laughter suddenly rang out. This laughter could not be suppressed and came out directly. Everyone turned to look at the laughing devil ape and glared at him. "You guys continue. Don't worry about me." Devil ape waved his hand, but he could not control his laughter. Skinny Monkey seemed to want to say something, but Ji Hu did not want to listen. He shouted, "Die," and rushed towards Zi Chen. Looking at Ji Hu charging straight at him, Zi Chen did not dodge. He raised his palm and slapped Ji Hu's head like a slap. Chapter 929. A crisp sound reverberated throughout the entire battle stage. Guhu was sent flying by Zi Chen's slap. After Guhu was sent flying, cheers could be heard from all around. Ah, senior brother Guhu was sent flying. Yeah, he was sent flying by a slap. It was just a test. Senior brother Guhu did not use his full strength. It doesn't count. Guhu roared and turned into a lightning bolt again. His aura was surging and his body was surging with violent energy. Zi Chen took a step forward, golden light surging from his hand. His palm landed on Ji Yu's head, and it was still Ji Yu's head, which was sent flying with a single slap. It doesn't count. It was still a test. The voice from the side sounded again. If it was a coincidence that Guhu was testing, then it was no longer a coincidence that he was sent flying by a slap for the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth times. Guhu was sent flying again and again, and his face turned ugly. The rest stopped talking. Apparently, they could tell that Guhu was no match for Zi Chen in close combat. The ground shook as Guhu leaped into the air. Immediately after, a powerful aura surged around him. He stood in the air and formed seals with his hands. Apparently, he had learned to be smart. He was no longer in close combat and was using pure techniques to attack. Light Dragon Break. With a loud roar, a giant light dragon appeared in front of Guhu. The light dragon was over 20 meters long and looked extremely majestic. It was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in the air. Guhu pointed his finger and the light dragon rushed towards Zichen. Zichen's body also soared into the sky. Both of his hands were emitting golden light and he actually grabbed the light dragon. After grabbing the light dragon, Zichen's face was obviously different. This was because the yuan power that formed the light dragon was actually filled with tenacity. Obviously, Jiyu, whose control of yuan power had reached a very high level. This level of control was definitely not weaker than Zichen's. However, the quality of the energy in the light dragon was much worse than Zichen's. Seeing Zichen grab the light dragon, Guhu sneered and shouted, "Explode." He used his powerful spiritual senses to control the light dragon, wanting it to explode in front of Zichen. However, at the next moment, Jiyu, whose expression changed, and so did the expressions of the people around him. This was because the light dragon in Zichen's hand was no longer under Jiyu, whose control. Jiyu, whose expression changed drastically. There was a look of indignation on his face as he continued to invade the light dragon with his spiritual senses. He wanted to control the light dragon to collapse, but when his spiritual senses reached the light dragon's surroundings, they were blocked by an invisible barrier and reflected back. Zichen grabbed the light dragon's head with both his hands, and the golden essence force in his body continuously surged into the light dragon. Very quickly, the light dragon's body emitted a pure golden light. At this moment, Zichen looked up at Jiyu Hu and said with a smile, "Did you just call it light dragon break? I don't think that's right. It should be called golden dragon break." After he spoke, Zichen released the golden dragon with both hands. Then, the crowd saw the golden dragon's body twisting in the air. Suddenly, it turned back and flew towards Jiyu Hu. When it arrived in front of Jiyu Hu, the golden dragon exploded with a loud bang. Violent energy surged in the air above the battle stage. After being hit by the energy, Jiyu Hu coughed out blood and was sent flying. When he landed, he was already outside the battle stage. Zichen stood in the air above the battle stage and did not chase after Jiyu Hu. Although it was a deathmatch, Zichen had no intention of killing Jiyu Hu. A few people went up to help Jiyu Hu up. They were still in shock. They never expected Jiyu Hu to be defeated so thoroughly. Regardless of whether it was close-range or long-range attacks, he was completely defeated. "Is there anyone else who wants to have a deathmatch with me?" Zichen didn't seem to be satisfied with the fight and looked down. Wherever Zichen looked, the crowd quickly shook their heads and retreated. Obviously, they didn't want to be abused. "What's going on?" Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. Following the voice, 3 people walked over from afar. The leader was a young and beautiful woman, and beside her were 2 young men. When Jiyu Hu saw these people, his face instantly darkened. He looked at Skinny Monkey and said coldly, "Skinny Monkey, this is what you did." As soon as he finished speaking, Jiyu Hu coughed out blood again. "Senior brother Jiyu Hu, I'm doing this for your own good. You don't have any advantage among these people, so I'm mainly trying to increase your popularity," Skinny Monkey said with a sad face. Jiyu Hu had the urge to slap Skinny Monkey to death, but it wasn't the time to pursue this matter. With a flash of light, Jiyu Hu had an extra set of clothes. He took a deep breath and suppressed the injuries that weren't too serious. He pushed Skinny Monkey and the person beside him aside and turned to walk towards the woman. As he approached, Jiyu Hu had a warm smile on his face. He asked gently, "Jiyu, why are you here?" Before the woman called Jiyu could speak, a handsome young man beside her said, "Jiyu, put away that disgusting smile of yours. You're a big and tall man. Why do you have to learn to smile without showing your teeth? How disgusting." The one who spoke was the young man on Jiyu's left. The one on her right said directly, "We were invited by someone to watch your deathmatch. Why are you still alive? Has the deathmatch not started, or has it started and you haven't been killed? Jiyu Zun, Jiyu Mai, what's the meaning of this?" Jiyu Hu said coldly. The young man named Jiyu Mai smiled and said, "Nothing. We just want to see if you've been killed. If you're not dead, we'll cheer for you. If you're dead, we'll avenge you." Jiyu Hu's eyes flashed coldly, But he held it in because he couldn't beat Gu Mai. You're injured. Gu Yu finally spoke. Her voice was crisp, and her eyebrows were knitted. The concern on her face was obvious. Gu Yu quickly shook his head and said, "No. You're still denying it." Gu Yu glared at Gu Hu, and the latter quickly lowered his head. The people around them didn't speak. Gu Yu knew these people. They were all Gu Hu's friends. If they couldn't beat Gu Hu, they naturally couldn't injure him. Gu Yu's gaze finally landed on Zichen, a stranger. Zichen had already descended from the sky and landed on the battle platform. Gu Yu asked, "Are you the one who injured my brother?" "Brother?" Zichen was stunned when he heard that. Zichen felt his mind was in a mess. He looked at Gu Hu, then at Shou Hu and the others. As if being stared at by Zichen made him uncomfortable, Gu Hu shouted at Zichen, "Can't I be your godbrother? We're not related by blood." Zichen was enlightened, relieved, and understood. "If you don't speak, I'll take it as a yes. Do you know the consequences of injuring my brother?" Gu Yu asked coldly. Zichen smiled and said, "I don't know about the consequences. I only know that your brother wanted to fight me to the death. In the end, I only defeated him and didn't kill him. Don't tell me you dare to kill my brother." An extremely cold voice rang out. This voice didn't come from Gu Yu, but from the young man named Gu Mai. "Gu Mai, when did I become your brother?" Gu Yu glared at him. He didn't appreciate it. "You're Gu Yu's brother, so naturally you're my brother. That's why I have to stand up for you," said Gu Mai seriously. "Pa." Gu Yu spat. Just as he was about to curse, a light flashed in his eyes. He stopped being angry and smiled. "Good, Gu Mai. You're actually taking advantage of me. You've got guts." Gu Mai smiled. "This isn't taking advantage. If I get together with Gu Yu, then you'll naturally be my brother." Gu Yu sneered. "If you want to get together with Gu Yu, then I can help you. But the prerequisite is that you have to kill him." Gu Yu pointed at Zichen. "Really?" Gu Mai looked at Gu Yu, then at Gu Yu. The only person he didn't look at was Zichen. Zichen was furious. It seemed he had been unjustly implicated. These people were fighting over his affection, but they wanted to implicate him. But then again, this Gu Yu really was quite good-looking. Seeing Gu Mai's appearance, disdain appeared on Gu Yu's face. "If you want to kill him, then forget it. But your cowardly appearance won't do. How about this? I'll make the decision for Gu Yu. If you can injure him and put him in an extremely sorry state, then I'll allow you to get together with Gu Yu. What right do you have to make the decision for Gu Yu?" This time, it was Gu Yuzun who spoke. "My father. I'm representing my father now. My words are my father's words. You guys know that Gu Yu listens to my father the most." Gu Yu glared. "But this is only the former. If you lose, then don't pester Gu Yu in the future. Of course, you can also refuse. If you refuse, then get lost now. Gu Yu doesn't like cowards." Hearing Gu Yu's words, Zichen wanted to laugh. First, he was representing Gu Yu. Now, he was representing his father. Luckily, these people could understand. Gu Yu was already a weirdo, but what was even weirder was that these two guys actually believed him. After being provoked by Gu Yu, the two of them looked as if they had been injected with chicken blood. When they looked at Zichen again, their eyes were burning with hatred. It was as if they were looking at their mortal enemy. During this time, Gu Yu didn't say anything. Her pair of cold eyes were staring at Zichen. She had watched Gu Yu grow up, so she knew Gu Yu's temper the best. There could only be one reason for this. This youth was very strong. So strong that the two of them weren't his match at all. Seeing the two of them walking towards him, Zichen smiled bitterly. "This is between the two of you. It's fine to be jealous, but please don't involve me." Gu Mai asked, "You want to avoid the battle?" "Why should I?" Zichen retorted. "If you're a man, then accept the challenge," Gu Yuzun said solemnly. Zichen's face was filled with black lines. What kind of logic was this? Seeing Zichen's unwilling expression, Gu Yuzun said, if you don't want to fight, I won't force you. You can go around the stage and slowly crawl around it 3 times. Ji Mai also said, that's right. 3 for him and 3 for me. A total of 6 laps. Zichen laughed when he heard this. Then let's fight. Ji Zun said, all right. To be fair, you can choose one of us first. Zichen waved his hand. No need. Both of you can come at me together. What? The 2 of them glared at him. If you don't want to fight, then I will. After saying that, Zichen rushed towards the 2 of them. He stretched out his hands and slapped each of them, sending them flying. Chapter 930. Not counted. You sneak attacked. Ji Zun was extremely dissatisfied after being defeated so easily and shouted loudly. However, just as he got up, Zichen appeared in front of him in a flash and raised his hand to strike again. This time, it was another strike and Ji Zun was sent flying. Not counted. It was the same for Ji Mai. She did not want to admit that she had been defeated so easily. Therefore, Zichen continued to strike until the 2 of them were convinced. While the 2 of them were shouting not counted, they were also sent flying by Zichen. However, they were not sent flying blindly. Instead, they were sent flying rhythmically. In the end, everyone realized that the 2 of them were sent flying in a circle. Just as the circle was about to reach its end, the 2 of them fell onto the battle stage one after another. During this period, Zichen's attacking method was extreme speed and a little bit of origin power surging in his palms. His attacks were not enough to injure anyone, but they could send them flying. However, from the time Zichen attacked until the 2 of them landed on the battle stage, he had not taken the initiative to launch a decent attack. Zichen only stopped when the 2 of them were on the battle stage. He looked down at the 2 of them and said, all right, let's begin. The 2 of them raised their heads and looked at Zichen in shock. Begin what? Zichen pointed at the huge battle stage and said, crawl. Didn't you guys just decide on this? Furthermore, you have to crawl slowly for 3 rounds. The 2 of you added up to a total of 6 rounds. However, for the sake of fairness, the 2 of you can choose who will go first. What Zichen said was what the 2 of them had said just now. When the 2 of them heard this, they were immediately dumbfounded. From the beginning until now, the 2 of them had not fought back. Naturally, they knew how strong the other party was. They secretly hated Ji Hu for being deceitful and finding experts to trick them. At this moment, the 2 of them were naturally unwilling to crawl around the square like turtles. What if I don't? Ji Mai glared and said unyieldingly. Zichen spread out his hands and said with a smile, that's easy. I'll just beat you until you agree. As soon as he finished speaking, Zichen shot out a beam of energy that sent Ji Mai flying. The energy was not very strong, but it was meant to make her look miserable. Beside Ji Hu clapped his hands and laughed, good, good. Ji Zun, you should learn from Ji Mai. How unyielding. It's not scary to lose, and it's not shameful. But it's not good to have no backbone. Ji Yu doesn't like men without backbone. Ji Zun felt that his situation was too awkward. If he was stubborn, he would naturally be beaten up very badly. However, if he were to give in, he would be in an even more sorry state. In short, he had to choose one from the sorry state he was in. In the end, Ji Zun chose to fly out in a wretched manner instead of a more wretched one. However, he already bore a grudge against Ji Hu in his heart. They couldn't wait to say, Ji Hu, is this the reinforcement that Skinny Monkey asked for you? Ji Hu was still shouting smugly. He couldn't wait for the 2 of them to continue being unyielding and be abused. At that moment, Ji Yu spoke up and asked, where did you find such a person? He seems a little extraordinary. Ji Hu stared at her and said, Ji Yu, that's not right. He's not just extraordinary. He's very extraordinary. Let me tell you, he's Zichen. Zichen, the Zichen who killed a spirit body. He's here specially to look for the elder. He's Zichen. Ji Yu's eyes suddenly flashed as her gaze landed on Zichen once again. Ji Yu's heart skipped a beat. Sensing that something was amiss, he quickly took a step forward and stood in front of Ji Yu. With her line of sight blocked, Ji Yu asked unhappily, why are you blocking me? Ji Yu said, "Don't look at him. He's not handsome at all. Furthermore, he's very violent and not gentle at all. He's a far cry from me. Are you crazy?" Ji Yu tilted Ji Yu's head to the side. "Zichen, the elder requests your presence." Suddenly, a voice came from afar. Zichen, who was dealing with the two, stopped. Looking at the two in a sorry state, he smiled and said, "I admire your stubbornness. It's fine if you don't want to turn around today. However, when we meet in the future, I'll definitely make it up to you." With that, he ignored the two and left the battle platform, following the young man. Everyone's gaze landed on Zichen, watching him leave. At this moment, everyone felt that Zichen's figure was incomparably free and easy. As expected of someone who could kill a spirit body. A late-stage primal core cultivator actually defeated a perfect primal core cultivator so easily. Seeing Zichen leave, Ji Yu sighed. Ji Yu stared at Ji Yu and said coldly, "Do you think a spirit body is just a decoration? It's said to be invincible. If Zichen can kill it, he's naturally powerful. You're really bored to death. Come back with me. Let's see if father will teach you a lesson when he finds out." Ji Yu said, "I'm not going back. I want to cultivate. Unless father agrees to marry you to me." Ji Yu fiercely tapped Ji Yu's forehead and said, "What's going on in that head of yours every day? I'm your sister." Ji Yu seemed to be hurt. He rubbed his forehead and muttered, "It's not like we're related by blood." Ji Yu glared at him, and Ji Yu didn't dare to say anything else. He obediently followed Ji Yu back. As for Ji Yu Mai and Ji Yu Zun, they also stood up and tidied up their appearance. After knowing Zichen's identity and strength, the two could only admit that they were unlucky. Zichen followed the young man out of the plaza. They walked past many buildings and stopped in front of a small two-story building. After entering the building, Zichen saw the elder of the ancient race. Unexpectedly, both of them were present. The young man stopped outside and didn't enter. When Zichen entered, the two of them smiled and gestured for Zichen to sit. Of these two elders, the one who had given Zichen 10 times the contribution points was called Ji Yu Shoda, and the other was called Ji Yu Wenbi. "Sit, hurry up and sit. You've done well this time, very well." After gesturing for Zichen to sit, Ji Yu Shoda personally poured tea for Zichen. Zichen was flattered. "Seniors, you already know?" Ji Yu Wenbi smiled. "We don't know whether or not you obtained the heavenly book, but we've received news that the 5-element spiritual bodies have all died." Zichen wanted to say something but was stopped by the two of them. Ji Yu Shoda said, "Whatever you obtained is yours. It has nothing to do with us. You don't need to tell us anything." Zichen nodded and didn't say anything else. He quietly drank his tea. Just as Zichen arrived at the ancient clan, the sword ninja had also successfully returned to the first ancient road. His face was filled with fear and joy. The previous world was the sword ninja's 6th and 7th ancient road. Now, he was on the 8th one. As soon as he appeared, an old voice rang out. "How was it? Did the heavenly book appear?" The sudden voice gave the sword ninja a fright. He reflexively flew away, but after flying a few hundred meters, he felt that something was wrong. He had already left the previous world. This was the world of the ancient road controlled by the sword sect. What happened? Why are you reacting so violently? There was a flash of light and an elder appeared. He was the guardian of this ancient road and could mobilize the power of this world's laws. He had been waiting for the sword ninja here. Dead, they're all dead. The sword ninja was losing control of his emotions. Everything's dead. The elder suddenly had a bad feeling. The sword ninja took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down, but his voice was still trembling. "Senior brothers, they're all dead. There were always casualties, but he hadn't thought that the casualties would be so great." The elder's expression changed. "What about Kenshin? Did he succeed?" Zichen obtained the heavenly book. "The spirits were chasing after Zichen, but when I was running away, I sensed that senior brother Kenshin's life aura had disappeared," said the sword ninja. "What?" The elder's body shook as if he had been struck by lightning. After a while, he recovered and said to the sword ninja, "What happened? Tell me in detail. After we arrived in that world, we saw Zichen. Seeing the elder frown, the sword ninja explained, the one who killed the spirits and obtained the heavenly book, Zichen. Him? Wasn't he expelled? Asked the elder with a puzzled expression. The sword ninja shook his head and became agitated. No, the ancient race was lying. I saw Zichen and the alien race there. After the heavenly book appeared, a group of spirits chased after it, but who knew that it was fake? The real heavenly book was in a special space, and Zichen sensed it. The elder was furious. Damn the ancient race, how dare they lie to us? Damn it, could it be that Kenshin really died? No, I have to go back and take a look. The elder didn't talk to the sword ninja anymore and left in a flash. As the guardian of the ancient road, the elder had many privileges. He directly returned to the first gathering place of the ancient road. As soon as he entered Heaven's Pride City, he felt that the city was filled with an unusually strong killing intent. This killing intent came from the Five Elements faction, the Overlord faction, and the Sword faction. The elder's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. However, before he could return to the Sword faction, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. As soon as the figure appeared, he said impatiently, "Fifth junior brother, you're back. Did you bring back some news?" The elder hesitated. He was about to tell his senior brother that he would discuss this matter when he returned. But soon, all kinds of lights flashed around him. In the blink of an eye, the people of the Five Elements faction were all here, and so were the experts of the Overlord faction. One of them said, "Fifth brother of the Sword faction, you came back in a hurry. Did you bring back news?" Everyone's eyes were filled with uncontrollable anger, and their emotions changed greatly. This made the fifth brother of the Sword faction's heart skip a beat. He quickly asked, "Senior brother, did Kenshin of the Sword faction come back?" Sigh. The people of the Sword faction sighed, and their eyes were filled with grief. The elder's face immediately turned pale. As expected, something had happened to Kenshin. Whether it was Kenshin or spirit body, their status in the faction was very high. Their life cards were kept. Once something happened, their life cards would shatter. I saw the sword ninja. He said that he sensed that Kenshin's life force had disappeared. I didn't expect him to really die, the elder muttered. The people of the sword faction sighed and said, "It's not just Kenshin. Even the spirit body and overlord body of the Five Elements aristocratic family didn't come back. They're all..." The elder's face immediately changed. He exclaimed, "How is this possible? Everyone is dead. How can Zichen be so strong?" "Zichen? Which Zichen?" A cold voice sounded from the side. "The Zichen who was banished back then. The ancient race cheated and put him in that world. Furthermore, the sword ninja saw Zichen obtain the heavenly book with his own eyes. Kenshin and the others fought with Zichen because of the heavenly book." The elder quickly told him what Kenshin knew. Damn it. Could it really be him? The ancient race. It must be the ancient race's doing. This matter has a lot to do with the ancient race. Let's find them and get justice. If you don't hand over Zichen, this matter won't end. Chapter 931. On the second day of Zichen's stay at the ancient clan, Jiyu Shoda called for Zichen again. When Zichen arrived at the room, Jiyu Shoda said, "Zichen, stay here for the time being. Don't leave." "What happened?" Zichen asked curiously. "You left a trail in the heavenly book world. Someone came out alive and told everyone that you obtained the heavenly book," Jiyu Shoda said. "That's impossible. I killed everyone," Zichen said. Zichen also asked the devil ape if he killed everyone. The devil ape also said that no one who chased after him survived. Because there were too many experts, the devil ape also used up a lot of rare items. As for body cultivators, they were of the ancient lineage, so it was impossible for them to be highly skilled. There's a sword sect called the Sword Ninja. He's still alive. It's him. Zichen immediately thought of the Sword Ninja. At that time, Zichen didn't kill him, but he didn't die. He must have sensed that something was wrong, so he fled first and didn't chase after the devil ape. "Those forces are looking for trouble with me. They know that I killed the spirits," Zichen said. Jiyu Shoda shook his head and said, "They probably don't know. Because they're angry that they didn't chase you away and came to ask for the heavenly book, but didn't say that you killed the spirits." Zichen nodded and said, "That's right. The sword ninja only saw that I obtained the heavenly book, but didn't see me kill the spirits. Moreover, there were so many of them, so they naturally knew that I couldn't kill them all alone. To be honest, the battle was very chaotic. I don't even know how the spirits of the Mu and Shui clan died. You don't have to care about these things. Let us deal with them. As for you, just stay here and don't go anywhere. We'll talk about it again after this matter is over." Jiyu Shoda said, "Whether it's a cultivation method or a skill, you have it all now. What you lack is comprehension. So, the most important thing is to comprehend it for a while and raise your cultivation level." Zichen nodded and left. After that, Zichen and the demon ape appeared in the large martial arts practice square. Zichen mainly sat cross-legged to comprehend the technique. At the same time, he allowed the heavenly book to change his spiritual senses. In his spare time, Zichen would also move his hands. Of course, Zichen would only show a few moves after he had comprehended his battle skills. However, these were all his own moves, and no one dared to spar with Zichen. On the day they came here, after he had taught the three of them a lesson, no one dared to challenge Zichen again. These aboriginals appeared to be extremely pure and innocent. However, this was merely a facade. After interacting with them for a long time, one would know that they were extremely pure and innocent when it came to their own people. However, when it came to outsiders, they were extremely shrewd. Of course, even though Zichen had yet to meet any outsiders here, he firmly believed this without a doubt. That was because the ancient race had accompanied these ancient race tribesmen as they grew up. They had their own arrangements for the ancient race tribesmen as well as the ancient race tribesmen. For example, Jiyu, who had stayed in a world filled with tree demons for 8 years. Hence, his control over Yuan Qi was extremely strong. Other than that, the others also had the experience of surviving on the ancient race tribesmen. Their combat strength might seem insignificant in front of spirit bodies of the same level. However, if a Xiantian realm warrior were to fight against them, they would definitely be considered a formidable opponent. During this period, the demon ape had become very familiar with everyone. After suppressing his strength by 30%, the demon ape had defeated all of the ancient race tribesmen. After being deeply impressed by the demon ape's combat strength, the others no longer viewed the demon ape as an enemy. The demon ape's growth required constant battles. Hence, the demon ape would always look for people to spar with. He was considered a battle maniac. As the demon ape had suppressed his strength and did not use the black rod, there were many among the ancient race tribesmen who could fight head-on with the demon ape. Both sides could fight to their heart's content for a long time. Hence, everyone was happy to spar with the demon ape. As for why they did not want to provoke Zichen, that was because they could not find the thrill of fighting with Zichen. They would only be one-sidedly trampled. During this period, Jiyu Zun and Jiyu Mai came once. However, when they saw Zichen from afar, they immediately fled. This caused a burst of laughter. Jiyu, who specially came to look for Zichen a few times. On the surface, he was asking questions about cultivation, but in reality, he was warning Zichen. This was because after Zichen started cultivating here, Jiyu came here more often. Moreover, when she looked at Zichen, her eyes would be filled with curiosity. When a woman looked at a man with curiosity, it proved that she was extremely interested in him. This was not a good sign. Hence, Jiyu who wanted to nip this dangerous bud in the bud. Zichen. This time, Jiyu who came again and shouted from afar. He was very friendly and did not care whether Zichen was cultivating or not. Zichen opened his eyes and saw Jiyu whose mysterious face. Zichen smiled and said, "What is it? Something good again?" Jiyu who walked in front of Zichen and took out a palm-sized jade bottle. There was a hint of heartache in his eyes. He avoided the crowd and handed it to Zichen. He whispered, "This is my private stash. You have to drink it sparingly." Zichen laughed when he heard this. "Your private stash? Your father's private stash, right?" Jiyu whose face changed. He looked around and said, How did you know? Your sister told me. Ji Yu's face changed again. Ji Yu. It's her. Soon, Ji Yu became alert. He looked at Zichen and said, why did she tell you this? Zichen opened the jade bottle. The aroma of wine wafted out. Zichen took a sip and closed his eyes with a look of enjoyment. This wine was indeed very good. Zichen did not know when he had developed the bad habit of drinking. Moreover, it had to be good wine. When Ji Yu, who was extremely anxious, Zichen opened his eyes and said, your sister told me when we were chatting last time. She said that she has been losing wine at home recently. Chatting? You're still chatting? And talking about such trivial matters. Ji Yu, who was clearly anxious. This was clearly dangerous. Then, he looked seriously at Zichen and said, Zichen, are we friends? Zichen nodded and said seriously, I've drunk dozens of bottles of your good wine. Of course we're friends. Good. Since we're friends, there's an old saying that one should not bully a friend's wife, right? Ji Yu said again. Zichen smiled and said, she's your sister. I've never heard of an old saying that one should not bully a friend's sister. Ji Yu, who was really anxious when he heard this. He said, then we're friends, right? There's an old saying that one's mouth softens after receiving gifts. You've drunk so much of my good wine. Shouldn't you help me? It's fine if you don't help me, but at least you can't harm me, right? When did I harm you? Zichen asked with a smile. You're harming me by having ideas about Ji Yu, Ji Yu said. When did I have ideas about Ji Yu? You're still denying it. You've been talking about family matters. You haven't had any ideas. This is just a casual conversation. Zichen patted the jade bottle in his hand and said, don't worry, I won't stay here for long. I won't have any ideas about Ji Yu. I'll leave after this is over. Really? Of course. Ji Yu, who was happy again when he heard this. He said that he was a good brother, but his face was soon filled with curiosity. He asked, everyone outside said that you killed 8 mortal origin stage spirit bodies. Is this true? You actually believe this kind of thing? Of course I don't believe it. You? Killing 8 spirit bodies by yourself? At most, you can kill spirit bodies one-on-one. Killing spirit bodies? Stop dreaming. Ji Yu said honestly, yes. Zichen was speechless. Remember what you said. I'll bring you some good wine tomorrow. Ji Yu walked away proudly, but when he turned around, he was bumped into by someone. Don't you have eyes? Ji Yu said loudly, but when he saw the person in front of him, he opened his mouth and exclaimed, Ji Yu, it's you. Ji Yu, don't you have eyes? Ji Yu rubbed her forehead and looked at Ji Yu with dissatisfaction. She looked like she was about to explode, but when she saw Zichen not far away, her expression changed. She asked gently, how is it? Does it hurt? You're already an adult, so why are you so careless? Ji Yu's gentle voice stunned Ji Yu. A warm current flowed in his heart, but before it could spread throughout his body, he saw Ji Yu walking past him and towards Zichen. Zichen, do you have time? Ji Yu walked to Zichen and asked gently. Ji Yu turned around and stood behind Ji Yu. He stared at Zichen and pointed at the wine bottle in Zichen's hand. He seemed to be saying, I've already given you the wine, so you have to be nice. A girl standing in front of him talking to him, so he had to be polite. Zichen stood up and said, what's the matter? Being stared at by Zichen, Ji Yu lowered her head in embarrassment and said, my father wants to thank you for taking care of Ji Yu, so he wants to invite you to his house for a meal. Take care of me? Ji Yu, you must be mistaken. When did he take care of me? He even hit me back then. Ji Yu stepped forward unhappily. Ji Yu, don't mess around. This is my father's idea, Ji Yu said. What father's idea? It's your idea. Zichen didn't take care of me and even hit me. You can't let him come to our house, Ji Yu said loudly. In the distance, everyone looked over with gloating and mocking eyes. However, they all stood far away, and no one dared to step forward to watch the show. Zichen looked embarrassed and said, I'm really sorry. Recently, I feel like I'm about to break through, so I need to cultivate. How about another day? Gu, who was pestering her endlessly, so Gu could only say dejectedly, alright then. Gu walked away dejectedly, but Gu who gave Zichen a grateful look and then chased after Gu. From afar, Zichen heard Gu whose voice. Gu, did you cook something good? Zichen doesn't appreciate it. It's fine if he doesn't want to go, but we don't care. Let's go, I'll accompany you back to eat. Zichen blushed with shame when he heard that he was betrayed just like that. Looking at the wine bottle in his hand, Zichen smiled and took a sip before leaving the plaza. Zichen didn't go into seclusion. It was useless for him to go into seclusion now. He needed to comprehend. Whether it was Yantian techniques or his own origin force realm, he needed to comprehend. This kind of comprehension wasn't something that could be solved by seclusion. He needed to walk more, see more, calm his heart, and wait for the right time. Sometimes, he would leave this place and stay beside a mountain stream for half a day to listen to the sound of rushing water. Sometimes, he would stop beside a small stream to listen to the gurgling of water. Watching the sunset and sunrise, Zichen stopped cultivating and spent his days sightseeing. However, his realm didn't fall behind. On the contrary, it was faster than when he was cultivating in seclusion. Zichen's origin force in abdomen had completely transformed into perfect origin force during this period of time. As for his spiritual senses, they still needed some time to transform. After staying in this world for a few months, Zichen finally felt a change in his state of mind and his realm. Chapter 932. After a few months of meditation, Zichen finally broke through to the complete core realm. He was only one step away from the mortal realm. Once he crossed this step, he would be in the mortal realm. However, there were too many people who were stuck in this realm. It was not easy to reach the mortal realm, but Zichen was confident. Now that he had broken through, it was time for Zichen to go back. The ancient clan was located in a village with about 1,000 families. This was only a branch of the ancient clan, not all of them. Zichen came back. Along the way, all the ancient clansmen greeted Zichen. Zichen nodded in response. In the eyes of the ancient clansmen, Zichen, as a member of the royal clan, was mysterious. Although the royal clan was in decline, they still had a high status in the ancient clansmen. They had always respected the royal clan. Plus, almost everyone knew that Zichen had killed a spiritual body. Recently, there were rumors that Zichen had killed several spiritual bodies of the mortal realm. This made Zichen even more famous in this small village. Along the way, everyone greeted Zichen. Jiyu Shioda had also arranged a room for Zichen. Zichen did not go back. Instead, he walked towards the square. From far away, Zichen could hear the sounds of fighting. Arriving at the edge of the plaza, Zichen saw the demon ape fighting with someone, and that person turned out to be Jiyu Mai. Back when Zichen had fought with Jiyu Mai, he had been suppressing her, and the latter had not made any decent attacks, so he did not know how strong she was. Now that he saw her today, she was indeed extraordinary. Her combat ability was comparable to a Xiantian warrior of the same level. She used all kinds of ancient skills to fight with the devil ape. However, just as he was pushed back by the attack, he saw Zichen standing in the distance. His expression instantly changed. On the battle stage, after being pushed back, Zichen borrowed the force of the attack to turn around and run away without looking back. From the looks of it, he seemed to be fleeing. Haha, Jiyu Mai, are you admitting that you can't beat the devil ape? But it's fine as long as you admit defeat. Why do you have to run? A loud laughter rang out. This voice came from Jiyu Zun. Idiot, run. Jiyu Mai shouted. Run? Why should I run? I can fight the demon ape for 3 days and 3 nights, unlike you, Jiyu Zun said. Look behind you. Hearing Jiyu Mai's words, Jiyu Zun turned his head and saw Zichen walking towards him. The smug smile on his face immediately disappeared. He was stunned for 3 seconds before he followed Jiyu Mai and fled. Seeing the two of them in such a sorry state, Zichen laughed and asked, "Why are you running?" When the others saw Zichen arrive, their faces immediately lit up with joy. They followed suit and said, "That's right. Why are you running? We just want the two of you to crawl and run in circles." Although a few months had passed, everyone still remembered what Zi Chen had said last time. At this moment, they were still teasing the two of them. It was fine if it was just teasing, but at the same time, more than 10 figures flew out and chased after the two of them. From the looks of it, they seemed to want to catch the two of them. Zi Chen, it's you. Why are you here? Ji Yu who looked at Zi Chen and asked with a strange expression. There was a hint of displeasure in his eyes. What's wrong? Judging from your tone, you don't seem to welcome me back. Didn't you say that we were friends? Zi Chen asked with a smile. Ji Yu who snorted, yes, we are friends, but you shouldn't have come back now. Ji Yu was just about to forget about you, but you appeared. Zi Chen walked towards Ji Yu and patted him on the shoulder. He said earnestly, Xiao Hu, a man has to look forward. He has to have the heart of a strong warrior. He has to have the persistence to pursue power. He has to have power in his eyes. He can't just keep talking about women. Moreover, this woman is his sister. No, we are not related by blood, Ji Yu explained. Zi Chen waved his hand and said, okay. Let's not talk about this anymore. You and I haven't seen each other in a long time, so we should have a good gathering today. However, you have to give me the thing first. What thing? Ji Yu looked at Zi Chen in shock. Wine. I haven't been back for a few months. Based on 1 bottle every 2 days, you should have saved up dozens of bottles for me. Moreover, you and I should have a good chat over wine when we meet. How can we not have wine? Zi Chen looked at Ji Yu. Hearing Zi Chen's words, the corner of Ji Yu's mouth twitched. Why? You didn't prepare anything? Then I'll go to your house today and ask for a meal. Ji Yu's mouth twitched, and his eyelids trembled. Zi Chen continued, if I don't see the wine, not only will I go today, I'll go every day in the future to see your father and Ji Yu. We'll chat about our daily lives and dreams. Ji Yu had the urge to clench his fists and kill someone. Big brother Zi Chen, we've brought them. Big brother Zi Chen, they're here. Right at this time, voices came from the distance. It was Shou Hu and the others who had caught Ji Yu Mai and Ji Yu Zun. Ever since Zi Chen had shown his strength, these people had started calling him Big Brother Zi Chen. Ji Yu Mai and Ji Yu Zun's faces were ashen. They couldn't move, but they were still in good condition. As for Shou Hu and the others, they were bleeding from the corners of their mouths and their clothes were in tatters. The more serious ones had bruises and swollen faces. It was obvious that they had paid a heavy price to catch these two. Why did you catch them? Zi Chen looked at them in shock. Let them crawl. Isn't that what Big Brother Zi Chen said last time? Everyone's faces were swollen, but they were excited. Zi Chen looked at the two of them and smiled. Did you hear that? They want the two of you to crawl. You've been waiting for so long. Go ahead and let everyone have some fun. The crowd cheered again. Before the two of them could react, Zi Chen patted Ji Yu's shoulder with a do-as-you-see-fit expression on his face. Then, Zi Chen brushed past Ji Yu and went straight to the weapon rack not far away. Behind them, the cheering became even more intense. However, Ji Yu Zun and Ji Yu Mai naturally wouldn't really crawl. Moreover, Zi Chen was smiling and didn't force the two of them. It was obvious that he didn't care about this matter. After a while, banging sounds came from behind Zi Chen, followed by exclamations and the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground. It's fine if they don't crawl, but they actually dare to hit people. Everyone, let's beat these two to death. Shou Hu shouted from the side and was the first to rush towards the two of them. A chaotic battle broke out immediately. All kinds of sounds could be heard. Ji Yu was still standing there, his expression constantly changing as if he was hesitating about something. The battle continued for a while. Almost everyone's faces were swollen. Finally, the battle stopped. Ji Yu was no longer in a daze. He called Ji Yu Mai and Ji Yu Zun over. You two, quickly steal the good wine from your house and give it to Zi Chen. Ji Yu called the two of them to a corner and whispered. The two of them were beaten black and blue by the crowd. They asked, why should we give him good wine? Ji Yu glared at them. Are you stupid? If we don't give him wine, he will go to my house to take it. Once he goes to my house, he will see Ji Yu. It's not like you don't know that Guu is interested in him. Moreover, that damn old man of mine isn't very smart. He actually didn't object. As he spoke, Guu lowered his head and said in a low voice, "The wine in my house has almost been stolen. I can't take any more." Facing a strong enemy, the three of them were undoubtedly united. They stood on the same side and nodded heavily. For the sake of happiness, they were willing to give it their all. Wasn't it just some wine? Compared to happiness, these were all external things. Therefore, the two of them held their swollen faces and prepared to return. At this moment, they saw Zichen take out a long spear from the weapon rack and walk towards the black rock. The black rock was mainly used to test the strength of one's technique. However, the prerequisite was that it was accompanied by a unique weapon. The scratches on the black rock were all left by the original experts. The deepest one was a 5-fingered palm print that was 7 inches deep into the black rock. It was left by a genius expert of the clan. However, they could only leave shallow scars on the black rock. Seeing Zichen pick up a weapon, everyone's face was filled with curiosity. They all walked towards the black rock. Jiu Mai and Jiu Zun also walked over. They were very curious about how strong Zichen was, since he could kill a spirit body. Under everyone's gazes, Zichen struck out with his spear. This was the first move of the heaven-piercing spear art. The long spear streaked across the black rock, and a light flashed. A shallow scar appeared on the black rock. When Zichen made his move, the yuan energy in his hand was completely blocked by the weapon in his hand. Now, a shallow scar appeared on the black rock. It was a sign of Zichen's comprehension of the technique. Compared to the others, Zichen's comprehension of the technique was considered top-notch. However, compared to the scar on the black rock, Zichen's strike was truly insignificant. Seeing the shallow scar, everyone was stunned. They couldn't understand how Zichen could kill a spirit body, but his comprehension of the technique was so weak. However, after the shock passed, a burst of boos came from all around. "Big brother Zichen, you are an existence that can kill a spirit body. Why is your comprehension of the technique so weak? Is this the heaven-piercing spear art? It is known as the most powerful spear art among the ancient techniques. However, when Big Brother Zichen used it, it seems a bit too weak. Big Brother Zichen, you are purposely acting cute to amuse us, right?" Everyone spoke one after another. They didn't have any scruples. They had sincere smiles on their faces and appeared very magnanimous. They were obviously mocking Zichen. At this moment, Jiu who also stepped forward. When he saw the shallow scar, his face was immediately filled with disdain. Suddenly, his expression changed. He already had a plan in his mind. He then pulled Skinny Monkey over and whispered in his ear. "What? You?" Skinny Monkey's expression changed slightly when he heard it. He then looked at Jiu who with a strange expression. "What you? Hurry up and go. I have full confidence this time." "H, what can a mere Zichen that can kill a spirit body count for?" Jiu who had a smug look on his face. Skinny Monkey had no choice but to leave quickly. Let me see. Let me see." Skinny Monkey left. Jiu who squeezed through the crowd and walked to the front. He reached out his hand and touched the scar. After touching it a few times, he tilted his head and said, "I don't feel anything. This is too shallow." After that, Jiu who looked at Zichen and said, "Zichen, as one of the 4 royal tribes, your comprehension of the ancient techniques is really terrible. If you go out like this, you will embarrass the ancient tribes." The people around nodded. Zichen looked at Jiu who and smiled without saying a word. He had already guessed that this guy was going to cause trouble again. Chapter 933. The black rock in front of them was square in shape and was as large as a mountain. This was something that the Aboriginals used to test their skills. However, the prerequisite was that they had to use a unique weapon. For example, the long spear in Zichen's hand was completely isolated from elemental energy. When Zichen's attack landed on the black rock, it would show the extent of his comprehension of the skill. At this moment, Jiu who was saying that any random person would be able to defeat Zichen. It was obvious that he was looking down on Zichen. However, Zichen didn't sense any hostility from Jiu who. He knew that Ji Hu was merely speaking the truth. However, this truth was truly unpleasant to hear. Beside him, the others laughed and said, "Hey, let me try. I can defeat Big Brother Zichen. I can do it too. My last attack was twice as clear as Big Brother Zichen's." Everyone laughed and stepped forward, eager to give it a try. Skinny Monkey-like shouted, "Let me do it, let me do it. I'll crush Big Brother Zichen. In the future, I'll go out and tell people that I once crushed Zichen, who killed the spirit body. I'm stronger than Zichen, stronger than the spirit body." Shou Hu stepped forward, but Ji Hu kicked him away. Ji Hu thought to himself, "I'm the one in the limelight, not you." When he kicked Shou Hu away, Ji Hu saw a figure appear in the distance. He was slightly pleased. He looked at Zichen again and said, "Zichen, it's not that I want to criticize you, but the comprehension of techniques is really a technical job. Since everyone is here today, and I'm in the mood, I might as well teach you a few moves." Zichen smiled and asked, "Teach me a few moves. Do you know the sky-crushing spear art?" Ji Hu said seriously, "I don't know the sky-crushing spear art, but you're obviously at a disadvantage. As long as you can master one technique, you can master all of them. The most important thing is refinement." Zichen shook his head. "I don't understand. It's so profound." "Of course you don't understand. But you don't seem convinced. How about this, let's have a competition," Ji Hu said. Zichen looked at Ji Hu. "What competition? Battle power? Come on then." With that, Zichen raised his hand. There were 3 people in the arena whose expressions changed when Zichen raised his palm. The corners of Ji Hu's mouth twitched slightly as he said, "Today, we're not competing with our battle prowess. It's meaningless to always be fighting and killing. Today, we're only competing with our comprehension of techniques. Technique comprehension. That's right. Let's attack the Black Rock. Whoever leaves the deepest mark wins," Ji Hu said proudly. However, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "No, let's not compete like that. That would be too much of a blow to you. How about this, I'll strike once and leave a scar on it. As long as you can do the same as me, it'll be my loss." Zichen smiled and asked, "Wouldn't that be a loss for you?" Ji Hu patted Zichen's shoulder and said, "We are friends. What's there to be afraid of? Come, Skinny Monkey." Skinny Monkey, who had been kicked out, came forward with a black saber in his hand. He handed the black saber to Ji Hu and said to Zichen, "Brother Zichen, all the best. I have high hopes for you." Everyone dispersed and stood in the distance to watch the show. Ji Hu waved his saber and with a flash of light, a ray of light flashed across the black saber and slashed at the black rock. Instantly, a 0.5 centimeter deep and 10 centimeter long scratch appeared on the black rock. Ji Hu put away his saber and pointed at the scratch on it. Among ancient techniques, this can only be considered as a beginner. "Come, try this first and see if it's a beginner." Cheers immediately came from the surroundings. Everyone was cheering for Ji Hu and encouraging Zichen to go forward. "Ji Hu is clearly trying to embarrass you today." Devil Ape came to Zichen's side and whispered. The smile on Zichen's face did not fade. He was in a good mood after breaking through. Since everyone was interested in playing, he would accompany them. Zichen walked to the side of the black rock and looked at the mark he had left on it. It was only slightly worse than Ji Hu's. However, Ji Hu was very cunning. He seemed to know that Zichen would not be able to break through, so he deliberately made it deeper than Zichen's. He even said that it was a beginner. It was purely to disgust Zichen. Zichen did not say much and struck again. It was the same move as before, but the swing of the spear was slightly different. Phut! The carvings on the black stone were twice as deep as before, surpassing the carvings left behind by Ji Hu. When Ji Hu saw that Zichen's 2 attacks were so different from each other, a trace of astonishment appeared on his face. "Big Brother Zichen, well done. Big Brother Zichen has won." Those who were watching the show began to cheer. In the distance, Ji Hu, who had arrived, did not go forward. Instead, she stood in the same spot and looked over with mixed feelings. Ji Hu glared at the crowd and said, "What do you mean I lost? I was just demonstrating for Zi Chen. That can only be considered a beginner. Do you think that Gu whose comprehension of techniques is inferior to a beginner? After striking twice in a row, Zi Chen already felt the wonders of the black rock. It was indeed a good thing to test one's comprehension of techniques. Every strike he made could be clearly displayed on it. The areas where he was lacking in strength could also be clearly perceived. He said directly, "All right, give me another one. Let me try." "All right, you've only just reached the beginner level. Now, I'll give you one that has been at the beginner level for a while." As soon as he finished speaking, the saber flashed and another scratch appeared on the black rock. This time, it was deeper, close to 2 centimeters. Moreover, Gu who looked as if he had done it casually and effortlessly. Zi Chen's eyes were filled with admiration. Gu whose comprehension of techniques was indeed very strong. After that, Zi Chen closed his eyes and practiced the sky-piercing spear art in his mind. When he opened his eyes again, he struck again. There was another scratch on the black rock. It was deeper than the previous one, but shallower than the one left by Gu whose face was immediately filled with pride. The others were also laughing. "Big brother Zi Chen, don't be anxious. Do it again. You will definitely defeat him." In the distance, someone was cheering for Zi Chen. Zi Chen's expression was indifferent. He struck 3 times in a row. It was still the same action as before, but he had made some minor changes. The 3 attacks seemed to be about the same, and there was almost no result. Gu who said proudly, "Attack as you please. Don't talk about 3 strikes. Even if it's 30, 300, or even 3,000 strikes, you might not be able to defeat me. Techniques require comprehension. Comprehension. Comprehension." Before Gu who could finish his words, it was as if his neck was being strangled. He looked at the black rock in front of him with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. This was because when Zi Chen's 4th strike landed, the scratch he left behind surpassed his previous strike. How can this be? Gu whose eyes widened in disbelief. The others were also looking at this scene in astonishment. It seemed that this improvement was too fast. Zi Chen smiled and said, "Come on, let's continue." "All right, that's what you said." Gu who took a deep look at Zi Chen, then turned to face the black rock. This time, he took 2 breaths to accumulate his strength before striking. This strike left a mark that was almost an inch deep on the black rock. Looking at this mark, Gu who said, "This is considered as having comprehended the technique to the level of small success. Come and try it." In Zi Chen's sea of consciousness, when his perfect spiritual senses were evolving the first move of the sky-piercing spear art, it was also breaking down this move. This move was broken down into movements by his perfect spiritual senses. There were a total of 18 movements, and each of them maintained different postures. At the same time, these 18 movements were each divided into 18 smaller movements. There were a total of 324 smaller movements. These smaller movements were broken down from the 18 larger movements. Furthermore, every 18 smaller movements could become one larger movement. The perfect spiritual senses allowed Zi Chen to remember these 324 smaller movements. After combining these smaller movements, they became 18 larger movements. These 18 larger movements formed the first move of the sky-piercing spear art. Zi Chen struck out with his spear. The 18 movements were done in one go, leaving a deep mark on the black rock. It was unknown whether it was intentional or coincidental, but this strike was deeper than Gu whose strike. This time, this strike had reached this requirement. Everyone was stunned. It seemed that this kind of growth was too fast. Zi Chen didn't know that his perfect spiritual senses had such a mysterious method. Previously, he hadn't noticed this special decomposition method. It seemed that it had just started. It seemed that his perfect spiritual senses had become purer. The perfect spiritual sense was an all-around analysis method that left no blind spots. It allowed Zi Chen to see the essence of the technique at an extremely fast speed. Not a single detail would be missed. Thus, he would be able to understand and comprehend the technique at an extremely fast speed. After understanding the first move, Zichen's perfect spiritual senses in his sea of consciousness began to decipher the second move. It was still 18 parts. After 18 parts, it was 18 parts again. A total of 300 figures appeared in Zichen's sea of consciousness. Jiyu, who was comparing the two scars. His face was filled with disbelief. Zichen's understanding of the innate stage technique was definitely very weak. However, after a few strikes, he had reached the level of small success. Are there any more difficult ones? Zichen looked at Jiyu who had an extremely ugly expression, and asked. Yes, of course. I'll show you one that has reached large success. Jiyu glared. Large success? Jiyu, are you sure you have reached large success in the technique? Before Zichen could speak, Jiyu Zun and the rest began to question him. You'll know if I've reached large success or not. Jiyu held his saber and stood in front of the black rock. He held the saber with both hands. The elemental energy in his body surged. His face was unprecedentedly solemn. Windbreaker. Jiyu maintained this posture for a full 5 breaths of time before he let out a loud shout. After shouting, Jiyu's body exploded. He held the saber with both hands and slashed at the black rock. The glaring saber light blinded everyone. With a clang, the black saber landed on the black rock and exploded into sparks. Jiyu landed on the ground with his saber in a half-kneeling position. Sweat dripped from his forehead and his back was completely soaked. It was obvious that the previous attack had consumed a lot of his energy. It wasn't the consumption of elemental energy, but the consumption of mental energy. Everyone's gaze shifted from Jiyu to the black rock. When they saw the 2-inch deep saber mark, they couldn't help but gasp. Jiyu Zun's eyes were filled with shock. He sighed. I didn't expect his understanding of the technique to reach such a level. This is definitely the power of a large success in the technique. Although Jiyu didn't say anything, a strange light flashed in her eyes. On the surface, she wasn't calm.